You get $1,500 a month? Grandma asked. But I never got a cent. My parents stole $54,000 from my brother, then lied about it in front of everyone. I am Noah. I am 21 years old, and during my grandmother's 75th birthday party, in front of my entire family, she asked me a question that set off a firestorm and destroyed our lives. Before I tell you how I discovered a web of falsehood so black that it nearly ruined me, tell me where you're viewing from in the comments section. The air in my grandmother Eleanor's dining room was heavy with the rich, savory aroma of roast beef and the sweet scent of cinnamon from the apple pie cooling on the counter. It was a beautiful fall evening. Outside, the leaves were turning vibrant tones of crimson and gold. The inside of the house was filled with warmth and laughter. It was her 75th birthday, a significant occasion, and the entire family had gathered. My Uncle Edward was holding court at one end of the table, telling a loud, booming yarn, while my Aunt Susan listened with predatory joy, always on the lookout for a fresh bit of gossip. My cousins were laughing, their expressions bright and carefree. For a little minute, as I watched my father, Daniel, laugh at one of my uncle's jokes and my mother, Linda, grin that picture-perfect smile, I allowed myself to feel at ease. We almost appeared regular and happy, like the family in a Thanksgiving movie. I was sitting quietly, like a ghost at the feast, attempting to absorb some of the warmth. These were moments of luxury that I could not afford. My life was a busy juggling act of classes, studying, and 2 part-time jobs that drained my energy and barely covered my tuition and low-cost accommodation. But for Grandma Eleanor, I would always show up. I'd move mountains for her. She was the sun around which our family world revolved. At 75, she was sharper than others half her age, with keen eyes that appeared to look right through you. She looked at me across the table and smiled warmly. It was a smile of pure adoration, one that made me feel seen, something I hadn't experienced from my own parents in years. She waited for a gap in discussion. Then, her clear, strong voice pierced through the lingering babble. The room became abruptly quiet. Everyone respected her. Noah, dear, she continued with all of her attention on me. I've been meaning to ask, and I keep forgetting. Is the $1,500 I send you every month enough? I know college is so expensive these days. If you need more for your books or rent, you must tell me. The fork in my hand stopped moving. It lingered halfway to my mouth, full of mashed potatoes. The world seemed to come to a halt. A dozen pairs of eyes swiveled my way. My brain tried to comprehend her words. $1,500. Every single month. That was more money than I made in 2 months of backbreaking work. I could pay my rent, buy all of my textbooks, and possibly even repair the shattered screen on my phone. With that much money, I let out a brief, puzzled laugh before I could stop it. It sounded loud in the suddenly quiet room. What money, Grandma? Silence. This was more than just a lull in discourse. This was a heavy, smothering blank. The air became dense and difficult to breathe. The laughing, warmth, and happiness had all vanished in an instant. I looked around the table. Nobody was looking at me anymore. Everyone, including my uncle, aunt, and cousins, was staring at my parents. My mother's face was a terrifying mask of frozen happiness. Her smile was still present, but it was brittle and hideous, like a porcelain doll about to break. My father's jaw had relaxed and his face had turned pale. He peered at his plate as if it contained the mysteries of the cosmos. My older brother Jason, the golden child and the focus of their existence, had a muscle jerking wildly in his cheek. The ideal family portrait had just been ripped to pieces. Grandma Eleanor's loving smile was replaced by one of cold, steely clarity. She did not need to raise her voice. The quiet venom in her tone was scarier than any shout. Linda, Daniel, explain. To comprehend the significance of that single word, you must first grasp the environment my parents had created. It wasn't only a financial lie. It was an outright lie about everything. The silence in that room was not new. It was the same silence that had accompanied each of my minor successes. The same quiet that had answered each of my whispered pleas for assistance. Over the course of 21 years, stillness was built up brick by brick. Let me give you a better picture of my life. A normal Tuesday for me began at 6 a.m. I'd drag myself out of bed in my small, frigid apartment to start my first job at the campus library. For 2 hours, I'd shelve books in the peaceful hum of the library, a dramatic contrast to my hectic lifestyle. Then classes run till 3 p.m. After class, I would not go to a coffee shop with my friends. I'd go to my second job, a greasy cafe downtown, and wait tables until 11 p.m. Shift ends. I recall one night vividly. A bunch of unruly customers had splattered ketchup across the table and poured Coke on the floor. My manager, a chronically agitated man named S., simply pointed to it and grumbled. My phone buzzed while I was on my hands and knees mopping up the sticky mess. It was an image from my brother Jason's Instagram page. He and his fiancée, Rachel, were clinking cocktail glasses on a beautiful rooftop bar, with the city lights glittering behind them. The caption said, "Living the good life." I noticed a harsh taste in my throat. I finished washing my hands raw, my back throbbing, and left with $23 in tips. That was a good existence. My brother's life was a separate novel, written by another author. In my parents' opinion, he was the hero of our family's tale. I was a footnote. They financed his downtown apartment with a view, paid for his car, and gave him cash when he needed it. They described it as investing in his future. My struggle, tiredness, and constant fear about earning rent were referred to as character building, as if suffering were a virtue. The injustice was a constant companion, a dull throb of indignation that I carried everywhere. But the true poison in our family's well sprung from a promise. A promise had been my sole source of hope. I was 18 and stood in the same dining room, clutching my university acceptance letter. I was extremely delighted to have graduated as valedictorian and received a minor academic scholarship. I assumed they would be too. My parents gave a short, "Good job, son," before giving their whole attention to Jason, who was enthusiastically outlining his new idea to launch a podcast on craft beer. I felt myself shrink, becoming invisible once more. But Grandma Eleanor noticed me. She always noticed me. She drew me into the kitchen, away from the others, and removed the letter from my grasp. She read it, her eyes full of genuine pride. "Noah, this is wonderful," she replied, her voice warm. She placed her hands on my shoulders and looked me directly in the eyes. "You have a fire in you, a brilliant mind. Don't ever let them or anyone else diminish that. Do you hear me?" I nodded as a lump formed in my throat. "Good," she replied, hugging me tightly. "Now you listen to me. Your only job is to go to that university and learn. You focus on your studies. Don't you dare worry about money. I am going to take care of you. I'll send you an allowance every single month, more than enough for whatever you need. This is my investment, and you are the best investment I could ever make." I cried right in her kitchen. I cried with relief and thanks. Her pledge was not solely about money. It was validation. It confirmed that someone in my family believed in me. That vow became my lifeline. So when I started college and weeks and months passed with no money, the confusion was excruciating. Did she forget? Did I mishear? Was I not worth the investment at all? The shame and anxiety of appearing ungrateful kept me silent. I told myself that I could handle it. I landed a job. When that wasn't enough, I ordered a second one. My entire life has been around character building. Around 6 months into my first year, I struck a wall. I was failing a course. I was always unwell, and I was about to drop out. I was desperate. I finally got up the courage to approach my mother about the money. I discovered her in the kitchen, assembling an expensive-looking bouquet of lilies. She was humming. I cleared my throat. "Hey, Mom, can I ask you a quick question?" Her humming ended. She turned, her grin courteous yet distant. "Of course, dear. It's just, did Grandma ever happen to mention anything about, helping out with my college expenses?" I attempted to seem nonchalant, as if it were no great issue. Her nice grin tightened. "What do you mean?" "Well, a while ago she said she might send some money to help out, and I was just wondering if maybe the checks got sent here by mistake or something." Her chuckle had a shrill, unpleasant sound. "Noah, you're 21 years old. Are you seriously asking me about an allowance? Your brother is out there making a life for himself, being independent, and you're here asking for handouts? I thought we raised you to be more self-reliant than that." Every phrase was a skillfully targeted dagger, meant to make me feel small and embarrassed. "But, Mom," I stammered, the injustice making my face flush. "Jason lives in an apartment you pay for. He drives a car you bought him. I'm working 2 jobs. Grandma promised me." Her face turned stone. "Don't you dare use that tone with me," she exclaimed, her voice frigid. "And don't be so selfish. We have a lot of expenses. Your brother needs our support right now. He's under a lot of pressure. Family helps family, Noah. Why is that so hard for you to understand? You should be grateful you have the opportunity to go to college at all. Learn to stand on your own 2 feet. It builds character." There it was again. Character. That was their reason for everything. I just stood there, my throat shutting and the falsehoods draining all the air from the room. She had not only stolen the money, she had taken the promise, the affirmation, the only thing that had kept me going, and turned it into a lesson about my own selfishness. I never asked again. I simply retreated deeper into myself, worked harder, and allowed the betrayal to solidify into a constant knot in my stomach. My cousin Owen was the only one who appeared to comprehend. During our late-night video talks, he saw the black circles beneath my eyes. "Dude, you look like a zombie," he would remark. "Let me guess. The royal parents are showering Prince Jason with gold while you're eating ramen again." His bluntness was strangely comforting. It proved that I wasn't crazy. Now, back in that peaceful dining room, the knot in my stomach was slowly loosening. The poison was spilling forth. My father, Daniel, was the first to speak. His voice was faint yet ready. "Now, Eleanor, it's not what you think. It was a misunderstanding." A misunderstanding. Grandma's voice sounded dangerously low. "Yes," my mother responded, her voice unusually bright. "We were just holding the money for him for safekeeping. We were going to give it to him in a lump sum when he graduated, as a surprise." The untruth was so outrageous and disrespectful that I almost laughed. Grandma did not laugh. "A surprise?" she replied coldly. "You were safekeeping $54,000 from your son, who has been working himself to the bone for 3 years, as a surprise?" "Well, when you put it like that," my father sputtered. "The truth is, Jason needed our help. He had a difficult situation." "A rough patch," my mother said hastily. "A momentary rough patch. It's all sorted now." Sorted. They had seized my future and called it resolved. I looked over to my brother. He did not look at me with remorse. He was gazing at me with irritation, as if my very existence had caused this uncomfortable situation. And I understood, with a clarity that pierced through the falsehoods and uncertainty, that this wasn't going to end. This was only the beginning. My parents' reasoning was offensive. Safekeeping? A surprise? They were flinging words at a house fire in the hopes of putting it out. Grandma Eleanor, who could recognize a bluff from a mile away, was having none of it. Her eyes were like laser beams, locked on my father. Daniel, you were a loan officer for 30 years. You understand the distinction between safeguarding and stealing, therefore let's end the games. What kind of a hard patch needs you to methodically drain more than $50,000 from your other son? My father flinched, as though he had been struck. It was an investment opportunity, Eleanor, he said, avoiding her gaze. Sure thing. It just went south. An investment, Grandma said, her voice full of disdain. And you, Linda, you went along with this investment. My mother, ever the staunch supporter of her golden boy, swelled up with rage. We were helping our son. This is what parents do. We were extremely concerned about him. He was under enormous pressure. We could not let him fail. Her voice trembled with fake righteousness. So you allowed Noah to fail instead? Grandma's question was gentle, yet it landed like a physical blow. My mother had no response to that. I couldn't be silent any longer. My raspy, rough voice cut in. What type of investment, Jason? I inquired, gazing straight at my brother. What was this sure thing that was worth my entire college savings? Jason, who had been staring sullenly at his fork, eventually looked up. His eyes were icy and devoid of sorrow. He let out a quick, dismissive laugh. Oh, please, Noah. You would not understand it. It entails risk, strategy. It's a little trickier than shelving books or flipping burgers. The insult, so careless and callous, was the last straw. Years of being dismissed, being the family afterthought, and being told my problems were for my own benefit, while his failures were coddled. It all erupted into a single burst of pure, clarifying wrath. At that point, I absolutely understood. They were incapable of feeling shame. They would never think they had done anything wrong. In this bizarre worldview, Jason was entitled to my future, and I was selfish for doubting it. And a terrible, chilly knowledge settled into my gut. This was more than just money. The story did not add up. Their lies smacked of desperation, hinting at something more sinister beneath the surface. As my emotional world imploded, I noticed another drama unfolding in the corner of my eye. Rachel, Jason's fiancée, had remained a statue throughout the encounter. Her face was pale, and her knuckles were white on the stem of her wine glass. She was staring at Jason, and her face was not supportive. It was one of cold fury. She was looking at him with the expression of a woman who had just discovered she had been played for a fool. When Jason made his snide remark to me, it was as if a switch went off inside her. She stood up so abruptly that her chair scraped across the floor, startling everyone. Jason, she continued, her voice dangerously quiet and tight. I need to talk to you. Now, in the hallway. This was not a request, it was an order. My Aunt Susan leaned in, her eyes gleaming with gossipy delight. Jason was furious, but he stood up and followed Rachel out of the dining room. An uneasy, strained hush descended once more. We sat there, pretending not to hear the angry, muttered whispers coming from the entryway. The old house has punishing acoustics. Jason, you lied to me from the start. Where is my money? It was my mother's ring. How could you? The disagreement ended with a strong, definite slapping sound that rang across the hallway. Everyone in the dining room flinched. A second later, the massive entrance door crashed shut with a shaking finality. Jason reappeared at the doorway, alone. A large red handprint was starting to appear on his cheek, a dramatic contrast to his light complexion. He appeared absolutely defeated. However, his default setting was blame, not remorse. My mother went to his side, treating him like a child. What happened, Jason, sweetheart? Where is Rachel? She's gone, he mumbled, eventually glancing up and staring straight at me. She left. Are you happy right now, Noah? You and your massive drama. You just had to ruin everything. He blamed me. Despite everything, he was still manipulating the story to make me the villain. It was breathtakingly audacious. But my focus was not on his feeble attempt to distract. My gaze was focused on the floor of the entryway. A little white slip of paper fluttered from Rachel's purse during her frantic escape. It had landed unobserved on the border of the Persian carpeting. Even from across the room, I recognized the flashy golden logo, Gold and Gem Pawn Emporium. My heart began pounding in a frenetic, hard pace against my ribcage. My mom's ring, the pawn shop ticket. Everything clicked into place with terrible surety. My last traces of fear and hesitancy burned away, leaving behind a cold, steely resolve. I got up from the table. Every eye in the room turned back to me. I did not look at my parents or my brother. I focused on the one person who deserved the truth. "Grandma," I murmured, my voice wavering almost imperceptibly but full of a new and strange strength. "Please do not let anyone leave. I need a minute. I believe there are certain other investments you should be aware of." I wasn't the fearful youngster anymore. I was not the victim. I was the one with the key for the next locked door, and I was about to kick it completely open. I turned away from their horrified expressions, moved calmly into the hall, and leaned down to pick up the pawn ticket. My hand was now steady. The truth was my weapon, and I was finally prepared to use it. I strolled down the hall and entered the small powder blue guest bathroom, shutting the door behind me. I needed a safe haven, a period of calm to let the screaming in my ears decrease. I leaned my forehead against the cool wood of the door and took a deep, ragged breath. The muted voices from the dining room sounded like a hornet's nest which I had just kicked. My hands, which had been so solid just moments previously, were trembling as I unfolded the pawn ticket. The clinical, typed phrases felt like a punch in the stomach. Item: 1.5 carat diamond solitaire engagement ring, GIA certified. Payout: $2,000. $2,000. He'd sold his future with Rachel for $2,000. The sheer desperation was astonishing. This was not a hard patch. This was a 5-alarm fire, and my parents were the ones with the gas cans. My first reaction was outright wrath. I wanted to rush back in there, push this piece of paper into Jason's face and watch him squirm. But I knew exactly what was going to happen. More lies, more denials. My mother would make up an elaborate narrative about the ring needing repairs. My father would stare at his shoes. They were adept in deflection, forming a reality distortion field around Jason. I needed more than just a pawn ticket. I needed something unbreakable, something they couldn't get away with, and I knew where to find it. Jason's previous bedroom is upstairs. He was staying there for the weekend, and the room was a fitting tribute to his stalled progress. It was a location where secrets could fester. I took another big breath, unlocked the door, and slipped outside. The family was still in disarray. No one noticed me as I walked past the dining room and up the huge, curving staircase. Every stride I took felt heavy, deliberate. I was no longer a guest in this house. I was a ghost roaming crime scenes, seeking justice. The upper hall was dark and quiet. Jason's door was on the far end. I pushed it open. It produces a quiet creak. I slipped inside, my heart hammering, and softly closed the door behind me. The air in the room was a mix of dirty laundry and cheap body spray. Clothes were scattered on the floor. A half-eaten bag of chips was on the desk. This was not a man's room with investing potential. It was a teenager's den. My eyes searched the room for anything out of place. Where does someone keep their darkest secrets? I began with the desk, sorting through trash mail and old college textbooks. Nothing. I knelt and searched under the bed, my fingertips sweeping through a cosmos of dust bunnies before discovering merely a long-lost TV remote. Frustration started to set in. Was I wrong? Was this a crazy goose chase? I was going to leave when I heard footsteps down the hall. My blood became chilly. I fell back and wedged myself between the bed and the wall, my heart pounding against my ribs. I held my breath. The footsteps stopped outside the door. I could see the silhouette of feet beneath the crack. A moment has gone. An eternity. The footsteps moved on. It was probably one of my cousins going to the restroom. I exhaled a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding, my body shaking from adrenaline. This was my only shot. I needed to find it. My attention rested on the closet. It was an old walk-in, crammed with items Jason hadn't touched in years. An old Nike shoebox sat on the top shelf, pushed well into the back corner. It was covered in dust and appeared to be a lost artifact in a chaotic room. Its neglected status made it the most suspicious object there. I dragged Jason's desk chair over, its legs grinding against the hardwood floor. I clambered atop it, my balance shaky, and groped for the container. When I pulled it down, a cloud of dust exploded around me, causing me to sneeze. I returned the box to the bed and sat down, my pulse racing in my ears. I lifted the lid. No shoes. It was stuffed with papers, a jumbled mess held together by a thick, brittle rubber band. With shaky fingers, I slipped the rubber band off. It shattered and disintegrated in my hands. The first several pages contained what I expected. Delinquent credit card bills with alarming numbers and final reminders from cell phone companies. All under Jason's name. It was horrible. But that was not the smoking gun. I dug deeper. Then I found it. What caused things to alter? It was a thick stack of letters, all from the same company. West Shore Capital Solutions. The name sounded somewhat menacing. The letters themselves were written in an aggressive, forceful font. Final notice prior to legal action. Immediate payment is essential to avoid wage garnishment. These were not nice reminders. The threats came from a debt collector, a loan shark with letterhead. But that wasn't the part that made my vision blur. The name and address appeared at the top of the page. The address was for my shabby first-year dorm room. I hadn't resided at this address in over 2 years, and the loan was in the name of the person who threatened to sue and ruin them. It was not Jason. It was Noah. This is my name. I could not breathe. It felt like the air had been punched out of my lungs. I frantically moved the papers. Everything was there. He could have simply accessed our parents' old tax files to obtain a $25,000 loan agreement using my name, date of birth, and social security number. There were default notices and letters charging exorbitant interest and fees. The total amount owing now exceeded $40,000. This wasn't simply stealing my grandmother's present. This was a profound and tragic violation. He'd taken my identity. He had taken my good reputation, the only thing I actually possessed, and dragged it through the mud, saddled me with terrible debt that may damage my credit, future, and ability to obtain a car loan or a house. He'd committed a felony against my brother and my parents. Did they know? Was this the tough patch they were trying to hide? The thought was a bodily blow. The $54,000 was not for an unsuccessful investment. It was hush money. It was to repay the loan sharks before they came for me. The wrath I felt previously was like a flickering light in comparison to this inferno. This was calculated. This was cold-blooded. It was the ultimate treachery. My shaking has stopped. A terrifying, razor-sharp clarity came over me. The time for fear has passed. The time for pain had passed. It was time for justice. I collected the pawn ticket and a stack of incriminating letters. I organized them into a nice, damning mound. I was no longer a victim hiding in the shadows. I was. The prosecution and all of the evidence was in my hands. I stepped out of the room, my footfall solid on the old wooden floor. I didn't return to the dining room. I went straight to the closed door of my grandmother's study. I knew she would be inside. It was her refuge. I knocked twice in a firm, definite tone. I was ready. I was going to detonate the bomb, destroying my entire family. Grandma Eleanor was in her study just as I had expected. The door was not locked. She was seated in her large green leather chair, not reading, but staring blankly out the window at the garden, which was now in darkness. A half-empty cup of tea sat cold on the coaster next to her. The strong matriarch of the dining room was gone. In her place was a lady who appeared exhausted, dejected, and deeply depressed. She looked 75 years old. She turned as I approached, her eyes clouded with weary misery. I did not extend a greeting. I didn't have the words. Instead, I approached the gorgeous mahogany desk that had been in our family for centuries. And in the warm, focused light of the green banker's lamp, I lay out my proof piece by piece. First, the pawn ticket for Rachel's ring. Then came a stack of mailings from West Shore Capital Solutions. I took the top letter, which said "Final Notice" in large red letters, and turned it so she could read it. "This is the rough patch, Grandma," I told you. My voice was quiet and devoid of emotion. It was colder and harsher than I'd ever heard before. "This is Jason's bad investment." She leaned forward, her forehead twisted with bewilderment. She took up the letter. Her usually calm hands trembled almost imperceptibly. Her eyes examined the page as sharply as they always did. I observed her expression as she assimilated the information. I witnessed confusion turn into incredulity, which then curdled into a dawning, terrible fear. She read the loan amount. She read the threats of legal action. And then her gaze fell on the name at the top of the page. "Noah," she muttered, her voice barely audible. She stared up at me, her eyes wide with horrible comprehension. "What is this?" "It's a loan," I stated plainly. "A loan he took out 2 years ago using my name, my identity." She looked at me and then at the letter, as if she couldn't reconcile the two realities. She picked up the next letter, and the next. Her movements became faster and more frantic. She saw the default notifications. She noticed the growing attention. She saw my name repeatedly associated with this financial disaster. When she finally looked up at me, her face was like a stone mask. The grief was gone. The heaviness was gone. The anger returned. However, it was a new and terrible type of wrath. It wasn't the burning, impetuous rage that comes from being lied to. It was the icy, deep, and overwhelming rage of a queen who had uncovered betrayal within her own court. She had just seen in black and white that her own children had not simply lied and aided, but had been complicit in a crime committed by one grandchild against another. "He stole your identity," she said. It was not a question. That was the verdict. I just nodded, my throat too tight to make words. She rose from her chair. She stood higher, her spine straighter, and the entire force of her strong personality returned like a tidal wave. The exhausted elderly woman had vanished completely. "They will not get away with this," she added, her voice cold. "This ends tonight." She glanced at me with a long, probing look. Her eyes caught a flash of something. Was there an apology? Regret? "Are you ready for this, Noah?" she inquired. "I am," I responded, and I was astonished by how strong my own voice was. "Good," she replied, offering a single crisp nod. She placed a hand on my shoulder as a symbol of camaraderie and cooperation. "Let's finish it." We strolled out of the study side by side. It represented a paradigm change. I was no longer the forgotten grandson or the family's punching bag. I was her ally. We were two soldiers headed to combat. For the first time in my life, I was not battling alone. When we returned to the dining area, the tumultuous atmosphere disappeared immediately. The family grew silent, their arguments fading in their throats. They noticed the expression on my grandmother's face and knew the ultimate decision was at hand. Grandmother Eleanor did not return to her seat. She stood at the head of the table, imposing and regal. "Jason," she said, her voice deceptively calm. "Earlier this evening, you belittled your brother by claiming he did not grasp the world of danger. Perhaps you could enlighten us, explain the risk." She pulled the top letter from my palm and displayed it for everyone to see. "This is a legal notification from the company West Shore Capital Solutions. They seem to believe Noah owes them more than $40,000. As this is the first we've heard about it, I'd appreciate it if you could clarify." Jason's face turned white as a sheet. He gave our mother a frantic, scared face, begging her to save him. I don't know what you're talking about," he said. "Don't you?" Grandma inquired, her tone dangerously gentle. She then displayed the pawn ticket. "And what about this?" "A pawn ticket for a diamond ring weighing 1.5 carats. I suppose this is Rachel's ring. It appears that your business risks now include stealing from the woman you claim to love." Linda, my mother, had finally broken. She leapt to her feet, hands planted on the table. "That's enough, Eleanor. This is a private family problem. You cannot simply air our dirty laundry like this. A family matter?" Grandma's words rang out through the room, making everyone flinch. "My grandson uses his brother's name to commit identity fraud, and you have the audacity to call it a family issue. My own son and his wife have lied to me for years, taking money intended for their struggling child, and you term it a family matter. This stopped being a family concern when you chose to support a criminal over your own innocent son." She raised a shaking, accusing finger at me. This boy who has done nothing except work himself to the ground to pay for an education while you handed over his future, his very name, given to an ordinary thief." The word criminal resonated around the hushed room. My father Daniel made a coughing noise and buried his face in his hands. Grandma Eleanor took a deep, trembling breath to restore her chilly composure. "Daniel, Linda, you are currently cut off. Your financial support for Jason has ended. Every cent you took from Noah will be returned to him with interest from your savings and retirement accounts. I'll personally oversee the move tomorrow." She paused, allowing the stark finality of her words to set in. Then she executed the coup de grace. "And tomorrow morning," she said, her gaze sweeping across the debris of her family, "I'll be on the phone with my lawyer, Martine. I'm making an emergency appointment to fully reorganize my will and all of my trust monies, including the house, stocks, estate, and everything." Her gaze, now devoid of any familial warmth, fell on my parents. "I must ensure my legacy that everything Walter and I have worked for goes to someone with integrity, someone worthy of trust." She didn't need to utter my name. Everyone in the room knew. The tectonic plates of our family had just shifted abruptly and irreversibly. I wasn't an outcast anymore. I was the last one standing. My parents' and Jason's world, founded on falsehoods and entitlement, had just been swallowed up by the earth. My mother began, her lips opening and shutting like a fish, with no sound coming out. My dad sobbed silently into his hands. Jason finally looked at me. There was no more arrogance or condescension, only a look of pure, venomous loathing. The expression of a dethroned king staring at the peasant who had seized his crown. I saw a promise in his eyes. This was not over. The silence that followed my grandmother's directive was the deepest of the night. It was a hush of complete despair. The eerie silence following a lightning strike has cut an elderly tree in half. You could practically hear the frenzied calculations passing through everyone's heads as they struggled to comprehend our family's new landscape. The power had changed abruptly and ruthlessly, and in that vacuum, my Uncle Edward saw an opportunity. He had always projected a sense of superiority, the affluent, steady sibling gazing down on my father's tumultuous existence. He pushed out his chest, straightened his already perfect tie, and spoke in a somber, condescending tone. "Well, Daniel," he continued, gently shaking his head as if burdened by my father's idiocy, "it appears the chickens have finally come home to roost. I've warned you for years that your failure to teach discipline in Jason will lead to disaster. A man must understand the consequences of his actions." He was attempting to present himself as Grandma's wise counsel in order to emerge victorious from the devastation. He was a vulture, circling, ready to pick the bones, but he'd made a deadly mistake. The most dangerous type of animal is one that is cornered and injured. My father, Daniel, who had spent his life being meek, weak, and pleasant, eventually snapped. He removed his head from his hands, his face covered in tears and snot, his eyes bloodshot and crazy. He gazed at his brother, not with shame, but with a lifetime of hate. "Discipline?" He spit, the word tinged with hatred. "You want to stand there and lecture me about consequences, Edward?" "Now, Daniel, this isn't the time," my uncle said, holding up a placating hand. "Number, you don't get to do that," my father said, pounding his fist on the table and making the silverware jump. "You can't pretend you're better than me. Do you think I'm the only one having secrets?" He gave a rough, barking chuckle. "Do you want to talk about bad investments? Why aren't you telling everyone about last spring? Why don't you tell them how you crawled to Mom on your hands and knees pleading for $100,000 to preserve your oh-so-successful firm from bankruptcy after your smart day trading hobby failed miserably?" Uncle Edward froze. The color drained from his face, leaving it a pasty, sickly gray. His smug facade broke, exposing the scared impostor beneath. My Aunt Diane and his wife let out a terrified scream. "100,000? She yelled, turning against her spouse. "You told me you had a bank line of credit. You said business was booming." "It was a private loan, a family matter," Edward mumbled, his gaze darting about the room, searching for an escape that did not exist. "A loan," Grandmother Eleanor murmured, her voice cutting through the fresh layer of pandemonium like a surgeon's blade. "That I have yet to receive a single dollar of repayment for." "Edward," I assume the word was short-term. The hypocrisy was sickening. The family's self-appointed moral compass was just as corrupt as the rest of them, but better at concealing it. The room erupted. Aunt Susan began sobbing and screaming at her husband. My cousin Owen looked at his father with utter hatred. He then stood up and went out of the room without saying anything. Another voice, quiet but powerful, enforced order in the midst of my family's devastation caused by greed and deception. "That is enough." Everyone froze. It was my granddad, Walter. He had been silent all night like a stoic statue at the far end of the table. He was a quiet man, constantly eclipsed by my grandmother's fire. But now, as he slowly and painfully forced himself to his feet, leaning heavily on his oak cane, he held the entire room's attention. "All of you, stop it. Now." The yelling and sobbing ceased, leaving a startled silence. He took a slow, methodical look around the table, his elderly, tired eyes taking in the full extent of the devastation. He saw my parents' abject shame, my uncle's humiliation, my brother's seething rage, and my own dismal, false victory. His gaze eventually rested on mine, and in his eyes, I saw a level of regret that shocked me to the core. This is my fault," he continued, his voice rasping from age and passion. Grandma Eleanor rushed to his side, resting a hand on his arm. "Walter, no. Don't be ridiculous. This is their greed, their weakness, not yours." "No," he insisted, slowly shaking his head and tightening his grasp on the cane. "It starts with me." He kept looking at me as he spoke to the audience. "It was my idea years ago, Noah. when your grandmother first informed me about her desire to send you money for college. I was the one who advised, Eleanor, simply send it to Daniel and Linda's account. It's easier and eliminates any complicated gift tax paperwork. They're his parents, I explained. They'll do the right thing and ensure he receives it. I thought I was being practical. I thought I was helping. He drew a ragged, quivering breath. I never expected this. I saw you, Noah. I noticed you returning home late from your employment. I noticed the lights on in your place at all hours of the night and said nothing. I assumed you were just driven, like your grandmother. I did not understand you were drowning. He fixed his saddened stare on my parents. My plain, foolish, realistic advice handed you the key to a door you should not have opened. It enabled you to betray your own son day after day for years. And for my part in that, Noah, I really apologize for my silence. I failed you as a grandfather. His admission was a stomach strike. It was not an excuse for my parents. It was a tragic origin story. It was the final, sad piece of the puzzle, illustrating how a minor, well-intentioned error might, in the wrong hands, grow into a world-shattering treachery. The fight drained out of the room, swallowed up by the gravity of his words. In the resounding silence that followed, I finally had the courage to stop it. I got up, my legs feeling more stable than they had all night. I confronted my parents and brother with quiet, profound finality rather than fury. I don't want an apology, I stated clearly and calmly. Apology means you're sorry. You're not apologizing for what you did. You're just sorry you got caught. I looked at my mother, who was crying tears of self-pity. I looked at my father, who was unable to meet my gaze. I looked at my brother, whose hostility was evident in the room. So this is what's going to happen, I explained. I am leaving this house tonight, and I need time. I need some room. Lots of stuff. Do not call me. Do not text me. Do not try to find me. When I am ready, if I ever am, I will be the first to make contact. I turned my back to them. I walked up to my grandfather and grandmother. I wrapped my arms around my grandfather's thin shoulders, hugging him tightly. Then I hugged my granny. Thank you, I muttered. And with that, I walked out of the dining room, through the front door, and into the fresh, pure night air, leaving the blazing remains of my family behind me. I did not glance back. Walking away from my family that night was like exiting a burning building. The air outside was cold and biting, but I could breathe again. The year that followed was a gradual, hard process of repair, similar to rebuilding a city after an earthquake. It was painful. It was a mess. There were days when the aftermath of sadness and wrath nearly knocked me off my feet. However, it was also the first year of my real life. Grandma Eleanor kept her promises and was twice as cruel. The next Monday, my new bank account, which she had established with a single phone call, received a deposit of $54,000. Her lawyer, Martin, added an additional $10,000 for punitive damages and mental suffering. The financial conduit to my parents' house was completely broken. Within a few months, I learned from Owen that they needed to take out a second mortgage on their home to keep solvent. They sold my brother's showy sports automobile. The comfortable, consequence-free environment they had created for Jason had vanished overnight. The freedom that money provided was astounding, but not in the way you might expect. I did not go on a spending binge. The first thing I did was leave my nighttime job at the cafe. I came in, thanked S for the opportunity, and gave him my apron. The relief was so intense that it felt as if a thick, oily coat I had been compelled to wear for years had finally been removed. I retained my modest part-time job at the campus library not for the money, but because I enjoyed the serene atmosphere. It was my refuge. For the first time in my academic career, I was not just surviving, but thriving. I focused all of my newfound time and energy into my studies. I met with academics during their office hours. I've joined a study group. My grades, which had previously been satisfactory considering my circumstances, skyrocketed. I was on the dean's list the first semester and every semester after. I was no longer the tired ghost in the back of the lecture hall. I took an active role in shaping my own future. I also learned what it was like to be part of a true family. My cousin Owen became my brother. He was my rock. He never pushed me to talk about the night, but he was always available when I needed him. He'd phone me up and say, "Hey man, I'm ordering pizza and turning on the game. Get over here." Those nights, lying on his lumpy couch and swearing at the TV, seemed more like home than my actual home did. He told me that his parents, Edward and Diane, were undergoing extensive marriage counseling. The implosion at the party had damaged their carefully cultivated image, and they were looking to discover whether there was anything genuine left beneath. "Dad's a mess," Owen told me one night. "He's finally realizing that respect is something you earn, not something you inherit." My other pillar was my roommate Leo, who was quiet and unassuming yet had a deep pool of empathy. He was the one who discovered me one night, sitting alone in the dark of our living room, staring at the wall, the phantom pains of my previous existence surfacing. He didn't say, "It'll be okay," or "You should forgive them." He simply sat down on the floor next to me, offered me a beer, and sat there in silence with me for an hour. His peaceful companionship was more therapeutic than any words could have been, and my bond with my grandparents was restored. We had dinner every Sunday, just the three of us. It was during those peaceful hours that I really got to know them. Grandpa Walter would question me about my political science classes, and we'd have lengthy intellectual discussions. He started treating me as an intellectual peer rather than a grandchild. Grandma Eleanor would tell me stories about her own hardships as a young woman establishing a business in a male-dominated industry. They were revealing their true selves, including their vulnerabilities and strengths. They were teaching me what a heritage of honesty truly meant. My former relatives attempted to break through the wall of quiet I had created. Jason bombarded me with angry, hateful voicemails for the first few months, accusing me of ruining his life. I erased them all without listening beyond the first few seconds. Then my mother's campaign began. It was a collection of writings, each a masterclass in manipulating guilt. One would read, "Noah, I hope you're happy. Your father's blood pressure is dangerously high because of all the stress." Another, "We miss our son. This silence is tearing your family apart. It's time to let go of the anger and forgive." And the one that finally prompted me to block her number. "I don't understand why you are doing this to me after everything I've done for you." Not once did any of them include the basic words, "I am sorry for what we did." It was always about their misery, worry, and wants. It showed me that my decision was correct. They had not changed. They had just lost control over me. My phone rang about a year after the party, just a few weeks before Thanksgiving. The number was unknown. I almost let it go to voicemail, but some instinct compelled me to answer. "Hello?" I answered. A pause, followed by a voice I had not heard in a year. "Noah." "Son, it's Dad." He sounded different, slimmer and exhausted. I remained mute. "Listen, Noah," he said, and I could see he was nervous. "I know you said not to call, but your mother, we were hoping you might consider coming for Thanksgiving, just for dinner, to try and, start over, be a family again." I closed my eyes. I imagined him as a man broken not by my deeds, but by the results of his own. I felt a feeling of pity rather than rage, but pity wasn't enough to entice me back into the burning building. "I can't do that, Dad," I replied. My voice was calm, but forceful. There was no hesitancy. "I'm not ready for that, and I don't think I will be for a long time. But son, I have to go," I murmured, gently cutting him off. "I'm glad you're okay, but the answer is no." I ended the call. It was not an act of vengeance. It was an act of tremendous self-care. I had spent a year methodically creating a new life, one filled with serenity, respect, and true love. I was the architect of this new existence. Another year is gone since that phone call. I'm in my final semester of college. A few weeks ago, I received an acceptance letter to a top East Coast graduate program in public policy. It's a dream I would never have allowed myself to have when I was sleeping 3 hours a night and eating instant ramen. Life is no longer only stable, it is full of potential. Sunday dinners with my grandparents are still the center of my week. Grandma Eleanor is already organizing a trip to see me after I relocate. Grandpa Walter handed me his old, lovely fountain pen as a congrats present. "For signing important things," he added with a wink. The gesture was tiny, but its significance was huge. My life is complete. My bond with Owen and Leo is the kind that will endure a lifetime. I'm even dating a clever, humorous woman from my international relations class who recognizes me for who I am, not for my past. Every now and again, while walking across campus as the sun sets or late at night in the library, I think about them. My parents. My brother. The searing, blazing rage has long since subsided. Hate is a great load, and I have worked too hard to be able to bear it any longer. What remains is a terrible, hollow regret and grief over the family I should have had. I feel bad for the mother who was so blinded by favoritism that she couldn't recognize her other child's suffering. I feel sorry for the father, whose weakness resulted in so much harm. And I feel sorry for the brother who was so preoccupied with entitlement that he saw me as an obstacle rather than a human being. The money I now see was never the main issue. The $54,000 was simply a sign of the sickness. The true crime was the gradual, methodical stealing of my self-esteem. The true betrayal was making me believe that I was worth less. Ironically, losing that money and learning the truth was the most liberating experience of my life. It made me stop waiting for their approval, to give up hope that they'd see me someday. It forced me to face myself. It compelled me to battle for my own value. They say that what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. I'm not convinced that is true. I believe that some things only kill you briefly. They leave scars. But I've discovered that scars do not have to be a cause of shame. They are proof that you have recovered. They are proof that you survived the struggle. My scars are a map of where I've been, and they serve as a continual, forceful reminder that I will never allow myself to return there again. They remind me that my family does not decide my worth. It's not influenced by my bank account or anyone else's opinions. It is defined by my own acts, my honesty, and my willingness to defend my own soul. It is the one thing that no one can ever take from you until you allow it. Thank you for hearing my story. I hope it touched you in some way. Have you ever had to fight for your own worth against those who were supposed to help you grow? After 15 years of dedication, I resigned, causing chaos in the company and financial trouble because my father favored my younger brother over me. Hello everyone, before we begin today's video, I need your help. We've noticed that the channel is losing traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can help us. It's quick, free, and allows us to continue bringing you great content. Your support means everything. Let us keep this channel growing together. Thank you very much. Now, let's begin the video. Hello Reddit, long-time lurker and first-time poster. I had to get this off my chest before I lost my sanity. If you don't want to read my son's tale, you can find the TLDR at the bottom. So, I'm a 34-year-old male who has been working for my father's plumbing firm, Taylor & Sons Plumbing, For 15 years. The son section is supposed to be about me and my younger brother Matt, 31M, but it's more like Taylor and his favorite son. And the other one who does all of the work. My father founded this company around 30 years ago. A classic small business story. We started with just him in a van and now have 15 plumbers, 3 office workers, and are one of the larger plumbing companies in our community. And I'm not being arrogant when I suggest that most of that growth occurred after I joined. After high school, I attended college to study business management for 4 years, earning an official degree. Meanwhile, my brother Matt barely graduated high school and required 6 years to complete a 2-year degree at a community college. While I was studying, he was uploading gym selfies and making his way around the local bar scene. After graduation, I returned home to work for my family's business. Dad emphasized the need of learning from the ground up, so I spent 3 years as a plumber's assistant, unclogging toilets, crawling beneath houses, and dealing with others' physical. Fine, whatever. I got it. Can't manage plumbers if you don't know what they do. I worked my way up, obtained my master plumber's license, which is a massive pain in the ass, BTW, and learned scheduling, inventory, and all of the boring but essential stuff that keeps a business running. I worked 60-hour weeks for years, missed my friends' weddings due to emergency calls, and did not date for around 5 years. Who has time? Then I finally made it. I became operations manager about 5 years ago. I began implementing all of the systems I had been planning. Digital scheduling, better inventory management, follow-up calls following jobs. Our reviews went from 3.5 to 4.8 stars. Revenue increased by 40% in 2 years. Dad genuinely appeared impressed for once. Then Matt shows up. Enter Matt. Until now, my brother had been bouncing between bartending and finding himself. Suddenly, he decides he wants to join the family business. Keep in mind that this guy has never exhibited any interest in plumbing. I can't tell the difference between PVC and copper pipe. I think a P-trap is something you use to catch animals. But Dad is absolutely thrilled. His golden boy has finally joined the family legacy. And this is where everything goes to hell. Dad offers Matt a made-up title like Director of Client Relations, and a salary that is 80% of mine, despite the fact that I've been there a decade longer. Matt is assigned an office with a window. Meanwhile, I am still in the converted closet adjacent to the restroom. What's his job? Taking clients to lunch. We're posting on our social media. Occasionally showing up at project sites to photograph our plumbers working, always making sure to include himself in the shot, as if he's overseeing. He arrives around 10 a.m., has 2-hour lunch breaks, and departs at 4 p.m., due to traffic. Every staff meeting, Dad compliments Matt on bringing in some minor contract while completely disregarding the fact that I recently optimized our whole billing system and saved us $50,000 per year. It's as if I'm invisible. There was one instance when I spent weeks putting together a bid for this massive commercial project, the largest contract we'd ever pursued. I'm talking about binder-thick proposals. I even pulled an all-nighter to finish it. On the day of the meeting, Dad brings Matt along. Matt had not read a single page of the proposal. Matt, who was hungover, kept racing to the bathroom. Matt, who described the client's building as that big place with the sign, throughout the meeting, we received the deal anyway since my figures were good. On the drive back, Dad couldn't stop gushing about Matt's connection with their team and how his people skills sealed the deal. My contribution? Dad commented that my attention to detail was beneficial. Helpful. As if I were the freaking office assistant. Moms know better when I try to talk to her about it. She gives me a sad expression and says things like, "You and your brother are just different kinds of people. Not everyone can be as organized as you are." As if competence were a character fault. The final straw. One day, I overheard Dad speaking with Matt in his office. The door wasn't completely closed. Dad was talking about succession planning. When you take over the company, and asked Matt if he wanted to learn about the finances. My name did not come up. Not even once, not even, maybe your brother can help you with the accounting, or something. The company I helped establish. The company I've dedicated my entire adult life to. And I am not even considered a prospective future owner. Just the workhorse who keeps things going while Matt takes the spotlight. Keeping my head down. I kept my head down and finished the work. It was not like I could do something about it. Then, around 9 months ago, our administrative assistant quit. She had been with us for 5 years but received a better offer elsewhere. Dad said we needed to hire someone with more office management experience because we were expanding. Enter Julie, 29 Fahrenheit. Something resonated with me the moment she walked through the door for her interview. She walked with confidence. Her dark hair was always in a perfect bun, and her emerald eyes seemed to see right through all the bogus corporate BS. She wasn't one of Matt's typical Instagram model types, but she was stunning in a refined, put-together sense. Her resume? Impressive as hell. Business degree. Experience managing offices for firms far larger than ours. There are numerous accounting software and business operations certifications available. Dad was so thrilled that he hired her on the spot. Something he never does. Julie changes everything. How about her first week? She thoroughly restructured our filing system, which hadn't been updated since the 1990s. Is this her second week? She discovered $20,000 in unpaid invoices from the previous year and collected it. Is this her third week? She confronted my father about our antiquated scheduling system and persuaded him to invest in the software I had been yearning for years. I was essentially in love. We started having lunch together in the break room. We initially discussed only work-related topics. Then we realized we both enjoyed the same true crime podcasts. Then I discovered she enjoys hiking, which I do as well. Then there were movies, novels, and all that. It was so simple to chat to her, unlike those awful Tinder dates where you're trying to think of anything to say. Asking her out after a few months of the lunch thing, I finally got the nerve to ask her out. For real. Dinner on Friday night at that new Thai restaurant downtown. Not the break room, with our sad Tupperware meals. She agreed right away, smiling in a way that made me feel like I wasn't simply the family doormat. We scheduled it for the following Friday. I was ridiculously excited. I even caught myself whistling while fixing a sink on one job site, which completely confused the apprentice working with me. I did not inform anyone at work about our date arrangements. My family has a specific gift for spoiling anything nice that occurs to me, so I decided to remain silent until things got serious. A big mistake. The gut punch. 2 days before our date, I was returning from work when I heard Julie giggling in the hallway. That genuine chuckle was something I had worked hard for weeks to obtain. But she was not laughing at what I said. She was chuckling about something Matt said. As I approached the corner, I noticed them standing far too close together at the coffee machine. Matt was performing his famous lean against the wall, look how cool I am posture. He was showing her something on his phone, and she was genuinely interested in whatever rubbish he was spewing. Hey, Ryan, Matt said as he noticed me, using that false brotherly tone he saves for when other people are present. Just showing Julie those kayaking pics from last weekend. Kayaking? Matthew. The guy who complains about having to walk from his automobile to a restaurant while it's raining. The guy who once asked me if the river near our house included those fish things. Since when does he frickin' kayak? Julie smiled at me, but it was not the same grin. It was simply polite, professional. The kind you give to a coworker, not the person you're about to go on a date with. My stomach sank. They're amazing photos, Julie replied, returning her gaze to Matt. I've always wanted to try kayaking but never had the chance. You should come with me sometime, Matt added, flashing that idiotic smile that always works on ladies. I go most weekends when the weather's good. Very peaceful out on the water. Let me tell you, this guy has never kayaked in his life. The closest he's been to a water sport is drinking beer on someone else's boat. But suddenly, Mr. Outdoorsy appeared. That would be fantastic, Julie stated. And she really meant it. I could tell. She turned to face me. Ryan, I didn't know your brother was so into outdoor activities. Neither did I mumbled. But they were quickly back to scanning through his phone, which I'm sure featured stock shots of boats or images he found online. The next day, Julie found me alone in the break room. My heart skipped a beat as I wondered if the Matt encounter was all for nothing. About Friday, she said. And I knew exactly what was coming. I'm really sorry, but I need to reschedule. Something came up. Something came up is the worldwide code for I found a better offer. And in this case, my brother undoubtedly made the superior deal. No problem, I replied, attempting to sound nonchalant. Maybe another time. Definitely, she said. With a smile. A smile that did not reach her eyes. A smile that conveys, this is never happening. Sure enough, I found out later through an office rumor that Julie and Matt had their first date on Friday, the same day she was supposed to go out with me, at the Thai restaurant where I had planned to take her. The next week was torture. Matt strutted around the office, as if he had won the lottery. Julie flushed every time he passed past her desk. When I entered the room, the whispered talks halted. Matt casually mentioned their date during the staff meeting. I felt like garbage. Every time I try to construct something for myself, Matt swoops in and takes over as if it was never mine in the first place. And of course, things got worse. Matt tells Mom everything, so she knew about it right away. She called over the weekend, all thrilled. Have you met this Julie that Matthew is seeing? He says she's just wonderful, so accomplished and pretty. She works at your office. She's our office manager, I replied bluntly. Well, isn't that nice? Matthew says she's very smart. Organized too. Sounds like she and Matthew have so much in common. They share nothing in common. Except for maybe living on the same planet. But sure, Mom. They are soulmates. Finally, I snapped. Actually, Mom, Julie and I were supposed to go out first. I asked her out, and she said yes. But then Matt swooped in. There was a prolonged pause. I could almost hear Mom trying to assimilate this information in a way that would not make her beloved Matthew appear terrible. Well, sweetie, you know how these things go. Sometimes people just connect. Matthew has always been so charming with the ladies. You're more, well, focused on work. Seriously. Not everyone appreciates that like they should. She basically said, Matt's hot and fun. You're boring. Deal with it. The new power couple. And that's how it began. Matt and Julie, Taylor and Sons Plumbing's new power couple. However, the saddest aspect was not even losing Julie. It was seeing her gradually comprehend who Matt truly was, and pretending not to notice it. The cracks begin to show. He canceled arrangements with her for the first time because his friends invited him to a last-minute poker game. The day she overheard him exaggerating, or outright lying, about his function in the company to a client. She once had to cover for him when he was due to attend a networking event but was too inebriated to show up. I could see the perplexity on her face. The mental gymnastics as she attempted to reconcile the Matt she thought she was dating with the real Matt. However, by that time, they had become official. And she was in too deep. My family circles the wagons. Mom invited Julie to Sunday supper 3 weeks after they began dating. It'll be nice to have a fresh face, she exclaimed. As if our monthly family dinners weren't already agonizing enough, especially since my work infatuation had picked my brother over me. I almost skipped dinner. But Dad made it clear that it was not optional. Family dinner is family dinner, Ryan. Be there. The dinner from hell, so I went, and it was just the nightmare you'd imagine. Mom went all out, using her best china and preparing a sumptuous roast. Dad told work stories that made Matt sound like a business prodigy. Matt performed his ideal son-boyfriend routine, pulling Julie's chair out, refilling her water glass, telling utterly fabricated stories about his wild weekends and charitable work. Julie ate it all up, laughing at Matt's jokes, questioning him about his fictitious hiking expeditions. While I sat there, knowing that Matt's closest experience with outdoor adventure is when he had to park at the far end of the mall parking lot, I attempted to join the conversation. I described the hiking trail Julie and I had discussed over our break room lunches, just to let him know what he ruined. Oh, Matt was just telling me about that place, Julie cried, turning to him with excitement. You've been there too? Been there, Matt asked, laughing. I practically live on that trail in the summer. Sure. He is suddenly Bear Grylls. The promotion I deserved at supper happened 6 months ago. They have been formally dating ever since. Anyway, I focused on myself and tried to adjust, praying that things would improve for me. I persuaded myself I didn't really care about what slipped through my fingers. I knew fantastic things would happen. About a month after that dinner, I was ultimately promoted to senior operations manager. After 15 years of killing myself for this company, this was meant to be a big deal. Increased responsibility, better pay. Most importantly, the company's car. Nothing fancy, just a new Ford F-250 with ample towing capacity for transporting equipment to job sites. The announcement that almost was worth it. Dad made a major announcement during our monthly staff meeting. After years of dedicated service, Ryan is being promoted to senior operations manager. This comes with a nice raise and the new company truck we just purchased. Well deserved, son. For once, I felt as if my effort was being recognized. I even allowed myself to get enthusiastic about having a great vehicle for the first time in my life. Instead of my rusted-out Chevy, which is held together with duct tape and prayers. And then came Sunday dinner. Fast forward to Sunday dinner. Mom's preparing her renowned pot roast. Dad's talking about a client. Matt has his arm around Julie, as usual. I'm just hoping to get through the lunch without saying anything I'll regret. Then Dad clears his throat and sets down his fork. I've got an announcement to make, says the man. I immediately tighten up. Because in my family, announcements are never good news. Matt and Julie share this glance, and I know what's next. The bombshell. We're engaged, Julie announces, holding out her left hand. With this huge diamond ring, which likely cost more than my annual income. Mom breaks into joyous tears. Dad begins clapping Matt on the back. I'm sitting there in shock. The fork had frozen halfway to my mouth. This is wonderful news, Dad exclaims. My boy's finally settling down, starting a family. Then he drops the actual bomb. The ultimate betrayal. Matt, I think you and your future bride could use that new truck more than the company could. Consider it an engagement present. You'll need a good family vehicle now. Matt makes a phony, astonished face, as if this hadn't been his goal all along. Wow, Dad, that's so generous. I've finally discovered my voice. Dad, that truck is supposed to be part of my promotion package. I need it for work. For actual company business. Dad waved his hand dismissively. Now, Ryan, don't be selfish. Your brother's starting a family. Family comes first. You can keep using your old truck for now. It still runs, doesn't it? Barely, I said. But no one was listening. They were all busy praising the happy couple, discussing wedding plans and future grandchildren. The final straw. That was it? The last straw? The moment I realized I was done with this family business garbage forever. Rage was building up. I was fuming. But nevertheless, I was able to drive home in my piece of junk truck. That decided to create a worrisome rattling noise the entire journey, simply to emphasize the fact that it was on its last legs. Perfect timing. 15 years down the drain, I arrived home. And totally lost it. 15 years. 15 years of dedication, hard work, and sacrifice. 15 years of seeing Matt glide through life on charm and Dad's affection while I developed something worthwhile. Something profitable. Something that was reportedly just turned over, again, to my brother. And now Julie. The only wonderful thing that had happened to me in years was presented to Matt on a silver platter. Complete with an engagement ring and a company truck. I don't think I've ever been so angry in my life. It wasn't even hot or explosive. It was this cold, controlled wrath that suddenly made everything crystal apparent. I was never going to be valued by this family. I was never going to receive what I deserved. I was merely the workhorse, the dependable one they could dump on while Golden Boy received all the glory. The email that changed everything. I grabbed my laptop and checked my email. I looked at the blank compose window for around 10 seconds. Then I started typing. Subject, my resignation. Dad, I am quitting from Taylor & Sons Plumbing, effective immediately. Consider this my 2-week notice, though realistically, you'll be lucky if I make it through the week. I plan to pursue other options. Sincerely, not really, Ryan Taylor. I pushed send before I could back out. Then I sent a separate email to our HR person, who is essentially the bookkeeper who handles payroll, about my accumulated vacation time. I advised them that I would start taking it immediately. I had no intention of returning to the office. The fallout begins. Within minutes, my phone began to blow up. Dad is phoning. Matt texted only WTF and stupid emoticons. Mom left sobbing voicemails about how I was tearing the family apart and being overly dramatic. Then Julie called. I let that call go to voicemail. Ryan, it's Julie. Your dad told me you quit. What's going on? Please call me back. As if she didn't know. As if she hadn't been a part of the entire disaster. I disregarded them all. I turned off the phone and began updating my resume. I was finished. I'm done being the family's workhorse. I'm tired of watching Matt get everything he wants while I labor myself to death for scraps of attention. The confrontation dad arrived at my apartment the next morning at 7 a.m. He pounded on the door, as if he were attempting to break it down. What the hell, Ryan? He yelled when I finally opened it, still in my pajamas and unprepared for this showdown. Quitting over email? After everything this family has done for you? I honestly laughed at his face. Done for me? You mean like paying me less than the market wage for 15 years while Matt receives bonuses simply for showing up to work? Or how about offering me a business vehicle as part of my promotion and then giving it to Matt as an engagement present? The excuses? That's different, Dad said, his face flushing. Matt's starting a family. He needs our support. And I don't? I've been supporting this entire family for years. Who do you think keeps the business going while Matt is away enjoying 2-hour lunches and posting on Instagram? Dad's face became even redder. Do not talk about your brother in that way. Matt brings in clients. He is the company's face. And I am what? What about the workhorse? The sucker who actually performs the work while Matt takes all the credit? I am done, Dad. Let Matt manage your business. You don't need me, anyway. The final goodbye. I started to close the door, but Dad's foot got in the way. Classic. You walk away from this company. You walk away from this family, he told me. It was all very dramatic, as if we were watching a horrible television program. I looked him dead in the eyes. If this is how family treats each other, maybe it's for the best, I replied, pushing the door so firmly that Dad had to shift his foot. He pounded and yelled for a bit before giving up and leaving. The aftermath begins. The next day, Matt arrived. I didn't even open the door, but yelled through it that he needed to go before I called the cops. He attempted the "come on, bro, don't be like that" thing, but I wasn't buying it. Mom called repeatedly, crying about how I was breaking your father's heart and tearing the family apart. As if I were the problem here. As if the 15 years of favoritism and disdain were my fault. But, you know what? I've never felt more free in my life. A new beginning. The job search was shockingly easy. That first week, I got 3 interviews, all with larger and more professional organizations than my father's. Both of them made offers. I accepted the position with Wilson Plumbing and Heating, a competitor across town. They're tiny but developing quickly, and the owner, Dave Wilson, values experience and hard effort. Isn't this a novel concept? What is the best part? They offered me a partnership track, in writing. After 2 years, I'll have the chance to buy in and become a part owner. Despite 15 years of service, my father never considered gifting me this. Oh, and they gave me a business truck. A brand new Ford F-350 Super Duty. Better than what Dad took from me. Fully loaded, with the firm logo on the side and everything. During my first week, I made sure to drive past my parents' house. Petty? Yeah. Satisfying? Of course. Watching Taylor and Sons fall apart. Meanwhile, the Taylor and Sons enterprise crumbled without me. I've been receiving texts from some of the plumbers, who were truly nice guys, and their stories are better than any revenge fantasy I could have imagined. Week 1. Dad attempts to take over. Dad tried to handle operations on his own while I was gone. He hasn't done the job in 15 years. He had no idea how my scheduling system operated. He ended up scheduling 3 distinct crews on the same day. Then there was no one available for an emergency call at the hospital. That's a large account that I've personally managed for years. They were not pleased. Week 2, Matt gets promoted. Dad delegated responsibility for operations to Matt since he was in over his head. Matthew. He can't even remember to arrange his own dental appointments. Predictably, it was a complete disaster. According to my friend Steve, one of the senior plumbers, Matt arrived late every day. He spent most of his time on the phone with Julie or his friends. Couldn't answer simple job-specific questions. They lost one of our second largest commercial contracts entirely because Matt failed to submit the renewal papers. The account was worth $50,000 each year. Gone. Matt was too busy posting gym selfies or whatever it is he does all day. The dominoes keep falling. The scheduling is so disorganized that they have had to call clients the night before to reschedule. This is infuriating everyone. Their online ratings have plummeted from 4.8 to 3.2 stars in only 3 weeks. Dad is blaming the new system. My system. Not the fools attempting to run it. The office chaos. One of the office employees resigned because Matt continued to blame her for his failures. Accounts receivable are stacking up because no one is invoicing on time. That was another thing I managed that no one seemed to know about. But I didn't expect. Did Dad have to take out a short-term loan to cover payroll? Because their cash flow is all messed up. 3 weeks ago, the business was solidly profitable, is currently struggling to stay afloat. And Julie? Apparently, she stays up late every night to keep things functioning. But she is an office manager, not an operations professional. She can arrange files and answer phones all day, but she knows nothing about schedule plumbing jobs, managing a group of 15 plumbers, handling various talents and certifications. She didn't realize what she was getting into with my family. Have you made your bed? Lie in it. The Taylor family breaks apart. Mom has been messaging me nonstop, increasingly desperate messages. Your father's working 16-hour days trying to sort out the schedule. Matt's really trying, but he doesn't understand your system. We had to tell 3 clients we can't get to them this week. Notice that none of these messages contain an actual apology or an admission that they messed up. Classic Taylor family. Dad's breaking point. Dad left me only one message, slurring his words as if he had been drinking. This business was okay prior to your sophisticated systems, and it will be fine afterwards. You think you're irreplaceable? No one is. Yes, Dad. Keep reminding yourself of this while your business rings the drain. Matt's panic mode. Matt's messages have progressed from phony brotherly concern, hey bro, everyone's worried about you, a barely veiled panic. Do you still have the login for the scheduling software? Dad can't find it. To outright desperation. Seriously, dude, just tell me how you handled the Henderson specs. Their project manager is freaking out. Julie's half-hearted attempt. Am I the only one who hasn't reached out much? Julie. She sent one email to my personal account about a week after my departure. It was lengthy and full of apologies about how she never meant to hurt me and how things with Matt just happened. And, of course, she hoped we might remain friends. Finally, almost as an afterthought. If you have time, could you possibly write up how you handled the scheduling? We're having some issues. I removed it without replying. Not my circus, not my monkeys. Oh, and the truck? Apparently, it's creating an odd sound. Matt had the audacity to ask if I could look at it, according to his most recent text message. The truck that should have been mine. The truck was part of my promotion but was given to him as an engagement present. I laughed out and then deleted it without answering. Not my truck, not my problem. A new life at Wilson. Meanwhile, I've been at Wilson for 2 weeks now, and it feels like I've entered a parallel dimension where competence is truly respected. Dave asks for my thoughts on operations. My ideas are executed rather than disregarded. The employees appreciate me for my experience, not because I am the boss's son. Yesterday I fully revamped their service call routing system. Dave was so amazed that he offered me a bonus on the spot. A bonus for executing my job well. What a concept. And then I met Kate. About a week after starting my new job, I met someone. Kate. She's an architect I met on the job site while we were working on the plumbing for a new office building. Smart. Funny. Director. Not playing any games. Kate is nothing like Julie. Kate is real, Whereas Julie was always polished and proper. She comes up to dates wearing jeans and boots. She can talk athletics as readily as she talks design. And calls me out on my nonsense in the most refreshing way. She doesn't engage in games. She doesn't say what I want to hear. Kate delivers exactly what she promises. Our third date. For our third date, we went hiking to a waterfall I'd wanted to see for years. Just two folks that genuinely enjoy each other's company. I showed her some urgent texts from my relatives. She simply shook her head. They had gold and treated it like dirt. Their loss. My gain. Then she kissed me, and I completely forgot about the family business for the rest of the day. Perhaps for months. A chance encounter. This weekend, Kate and I were at the hardware store, purchasing supplies for my bathroom project, when I noticed them. Matt and Julia. Great. Just as I was enjoying a normal Saturday with my girlfriend. Kate clasped my hand when Julie saw us and yelled out. Matt turned around, appearing as if he'd rather be somewhere else. Hey, bro. I kept it brief. Hey. Julie's gaze immediately focused on Kate, then on our linked hands. How have you been? Good. Really good. This is Kate. I introduced them as Julie sized her up. Kate, the absolute champion, grinned and shook their hands. One, nice to meet you both. I've heard a lot about you. Matt's panicked expression. Priceless? The truck problem. Julie inquired about our supplies. Renovating Ryan's bathroom, Kate explained. I'm an architect, handling the design. An architect? That's impressive, Julie exclaimed, suddenly self-conscious. She's an office manager at my family's company, I told her. Why not slightly twist the knife? It turns out they were there because of the truck. You know, the one that kept making strange noises. And of course, Matt had no idea how to fix it. I couldn't resist. The company truck. The one that was supposed to be mine. Matt had the decency to appear embarrassed. Yeah, that one. He had no regrets about what he'd done. Julie's apology. Kind of. Kate, ever the pro, expertly devised an exit route including some fictitious dinner appointments. Julie hesitated as we turned to leave. Can I have a moment alone? Kate questioned me, but I nodded. She gripped my hand before moving away. Julie moaned, appearing tireder than I had ever seen her. The engagement? Taking it slow? Translation. Matt's true colors were showing. The business? Not the same without you. Apparently, they had hired 2 individuals to replace me, but they were still lagging behind. Matt. Different since you left. Yeah. Working for the first time in his life will accomplish this. She shifted uneasily and tucked her hair behind her ear. I just wanted to say, I'm sorry. For coming between you and your brother. I nearly laughed, not in a harsh way, but rather in a wow, you really didn't get it sense. You, Julie, were not the problem. You were simply a symptom of a much larger problem. My family has never valued me. What about the truck? That was just the last straw. She chewed her lip and glanced at Kate. She seems nice. You two look good together. We are, I said without hesitation. She sees me for who I am. Julie nodded as if she understood. But I wasn't convinced she really did. In any case, I was not going to remain around to explain. Mom's final attempt on the way home, my phone rang. Mom. I'm not sure why I answered. She sounded surprised when I picked up. But she recovered fast, jumping right into the guilt trip. They miss me. The business is floundering. Matt is overwhelmed. Sunday dinners aren't complete without me. I let her babble while waiting for the inevitable request. You should come by soon. Maybe we can figure things out. I'm busy every Sunday for the foreseeable future, I told her, maintaining my voice level. Kate smirked as she overheard from the driver's seat. Want me to say I told you so? Or would you prefer to just bask in the schadenfreude? Definitely basking, I replied, smirking. No going back later that night, as we lay twisted on the couch, watching some bizarre true crime documentary, Kate looked at me. Would you ever consider going back to the family business? I didn't even need to think about it. Not even for a second. She grinned, delighted with the response. I'm not sure what will happen with Taylor and Sons Plumbing. Perhaps they can figure it out. Perhaps they will crash and burn. Either way, not my problem. What do I know? Sometimes the best thing you can do is move away from individuals who don't appreciate you. Even if they are family. Especially if they are family. It took me 15 years in a company truck to learn this lesson. Better late than never. My wife hired a trainer to lose weight. Now, she has filed for divorce and started flaunting her new life online, even starting an OnlyFans account. Hello everyone, before we begin today's video, I need your help. We've noticed that the channel is losing traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can help us. It's quick, free, and allows us to continue bringing you great content. Your support means everything. Let us keep this channel growing collectively. Thank you very much. Now, let's begin the video. What's up everybody? It's Dave here. Buckle up, because my life recently became a whirlwind. I'm 34, a typical warehouse manager living in Columbus. My life was not glamorous, but it was consistent. I had an excellent career, a great home, and was married to Carla. We had been dating for 5 years, married for 3, and I believed we had a good thing going. Sure, we weren't the romantic pair from TV, but we made it work. Bills were paid, we had date evenings, and the occasional disagreement was simply typical married stuff, or so I thought. Carla decided to embark on a major fitness adventure approximately 6 months ago. It came out of nowhere, but I was already on board. She joined an elite gym downtown that resembled more of a spa than a gym. She hired a personal trainer, Justin, and soon began discussing meal prep, macros, and detox programs. I did not mind. In fact, I encouraged her. Everyone should feel good about themselves, right? Plus, I believed it was simply a phase, similar to her brief knitting passion or her interest in tarot cards. At first, I even pitched in to assist her. I began taking on more of the housework, such as dishes, clothes, and groceries, so she could devote more time to her workouts. I figured that was a way to show her I cared. However, things began to change gradually, and not in a positive way. Carla's ego grew in proportion to her loss of weight. She got fascinated with her reflection, spending hours in front of the mirror perfecting her gym attire or photographing the perfect progress shot for Instagram. She wasn't doing it just for herself. She wanted an audience. I remember once suggesting that we see a movie together. It was Friday night, and I figured we could unwind like old times. She scoffed. Dave, I don't have time to sit around. I have goals to crush. Goals? What goals? I inquired. We weren't discussing running a marathon or conquering Mount Everest. She was simply lifting weights and drinking green sludge. But I just shrugged it off. Perhaps I was being unreasonable. Then came the morning, which began like any other. I was half asleep, nursing my coffee before heading to work, while Carla was drinking her normal kale spinach catastrophe smoothie. She was dressed in her exercise clothes and swiping through her phone as if her life depended on it. She unexpectedly says, I deserve more in life. I glanced up, still sleepy. Huh? More of what? She set down her smoothie and glanced at me, very serious. My marriage is holding me back, Dave. I'm filing for divorce. I promise, I assumed it was a joke. I even laughed, thinking she was joking with me, but she wasn't. Her expression was stone cold. I've outgrown this, she replied, as if I were an old piece of furniture she was about to discard. You wouldn't understand, she explained. I sat there, fully unprepared. My wife, the lady I'd spent years with, casually dropped this on me like it was no big deal. I tried to digest her words, but all I could feel was a mix of amazement and wrath rising in my chest. What do you mean you've outgrown this? Outgrown what? I questioned you. She sighed, as if I were a child with too many questions. Dave, I've been working on myself, trying to be the best version of me. And frankly, this life doesn't match my potential anymore. I want more than this house, this routine, this you. Her remark struck me. She did not even sugarcoat it. She saw me as part of the problem. Our existence together was no longer good enough for her. She grabbed her workout bag and walked out the door without saying goodbye. I sat there, staring at the half-empty glass of green sludge she'd left behind, wondering what the heck had happened. The day at work was a blur. I went through the motions, but my thoughts were focused on Carla. Was this real? Was she really abandoning me? We had had disputes previously, but divorce? It was so sudden and premeditated, and the way she said it, as if she'd been practicing this speech for weeks, made it plain she'd already made up her mind. Over the next few days, the flaws in our marriage became more clear. She hardly spoke to me unless it was to divide the house or set up mediation. She began staying out late, claiming she was at the gym or with friends. Her phone was glued to her hand, and her Instagram was flooded with selfies and messages like, "New chapter, who this?" and "Living my best life." Each post was a punch in the face, a reminder that she'd already moved on mentally, even though the paperwork hadn't been signed. One night, while looking through my own social media, I saw she had deleted every photograph of us, wedding photos and anniversary messages. It was as if I had been removed from her life totally. Meanwhile, her new photos were flooded with likes and comments from people praising her. "You're glowing. Such an inspiration." It made me sick. None of these individuals realized who Carla really was or what she was putting me through. Another night, I overheard her on the phone as I was preparing for work. She was in the kitchen, speaking to someone in that phony, syrupy tone she used when she wanted something. "Yeah, I just feel so free now," she explained. "I'm finally doing what makes me happy." She paused and giggled. He doesn't even get it. He's stuck in the past. That was when it hit me. Carla wasn't simply leaving me. She was reinventing herself, and I was the anchor she was letting go. But here's the thing. I'm not the type of man to just roll over and accept it. She expected to steamroll me and go away with everything, but she was in for an unpleasant awakening. This was simply the beginning, and Carla might expect a fight. But wait, things get worse. One afternoon, I'm having lunch at a bistro near work. I was minding my own business, looking through my phone, when I overheard these two guys at the next table. They're talking about a fitness model they discovered online. I didn't pay much attention till one of them said her name, Carla. My stomach sank. They were giggling as they discussed how she had some premium content to promote. At first, I thought, no way, not Carla. But then one of them pulled up her Instagram on his phone. It was my Carla. They discussed how she had begun teasing an OnlyFans account by placing links in her bio, such as for the real workouts. My blood boiled. This was not merely a fitness phase. She was turning her newfound freedom into a full-fledged thirst trap for money. When I arrived home, I confronted her. She was seated on the couch, scrolling through her phone as if nothing had occurred. "Carla," I asked, attempting to remain calm. "What the hell is this OnlyFans thing I'm hearing about?" She looked up, unaffected. "It's my body, Dave, my choice, and it's none of your business anymore." I couldn't believe she had the nerve. "None of my business? We're still married. You're out here selling yourself on the internet while I'm trying to hold our lives together." She rolled her eyes, as if I were some ancient relic who didn't get it. "I'm not selling myself. It's content creation. Plenty of people do it. Besides, it's not like you're paying my bills anymore." That's when it struck me. Carla wanted more than just a divorce. She wanted a new life. A life in which she was the star, the main character, and I was simply an extra she had written off. She was neither embarrassed nor remorseful. If anything, she felt proud, as if she had finally discovered her real calling as an internet spectacle. Her actions continued to grow over the next few weeks. She began dressing as if she were auditioning for a reality show, with tight clothes, sky-high heels, and makeup applied like icing. Every time she walked out the door, she appeared to be heading to a red carpet event rather than the grocery store. The titles got worse. "Living My Truth, No More Holding Back." And the one that made me want to toss my phone. "She's not a wife anymore. She's a force of nature." The arrogance. While Carla was out playing superstar, I was left to deal with the consequences, lawyers, paperwork, and so on. Carla, however, was not as untouchable as she had believed. My lawyer, Steve, an absolute gem, had been doing some investigation. It turns out she has been seeing a gold digger, but with a gym membership. I believe you can guess who I'm talking about. Stay tuned, everyone. Things are going to become messy. I will provide an update as soon as possible. Update 1. What's up again, Reddit? It's Dave, your favorite soon-to-be divorced dude, and I have a front row seat to my ex's drama-fueled glow-up disaster. If you've been following along, you know that my wife, Carla, decided she was too good for this life, abandoned me, and has been parading around town like a fitness celebrity. But first, let's talk about Justin, the man who has been fueling this entire catastrophe. Yes, her personal trainer. Really unique, right? The moment I heard his name, I realized it wasn't simply another trainer-client connection. Justin was the type of guy you'd expect to see on a reality dating show. Shredded, spray-tanned, and about the size of a puddle. He was all charisma, biceps, and smirks, as if he had wandered out of a horrible rom-com. Carla was very open about their relationship. One day, she strode into the home after her workout, virtually glowing. "Justin says I'm the strongest I've ever been," she boasted, without looking at me. "Yeah, Carla. I'm sure Justin also told you he's never trained anyone like you before, because that's his script." A few weeks later, she stopped pretending it was just an exercise. She began mentioning his name in everyday conversations. "Justin's taking me to this new vegan restaurant, and Justin said this protein powder is life-changing." Meanwhile, I'm standing there like, do I look concerned? Carla wasn't simply dropping names. She was parading him as if he were the prize. Word spread quickly. Friends began contacting me with sightings of Carla and Justin throughout town. They were holding hands, laughing, and behaving like the Instagram couple of the year. Carla did not even bother to hide it. She came home one night, as brash as ever, and said, "Just so you know, Justin and I are dating now. I think it's time you accepted that." "Oh, I accepted it, all right," I said. Accepted that my wife had turned into a full-blown caricature of entitlement. She'd already psychologically divorced me, so what did it matter if she added a public affair to her resume? The more I discovered about Justin, the hotter my blood became. He wasn't your typical gym bro. This individual had a past. My lawyer, Steve, who deserves a freaking medal at this point, did some research and discovered that Justin had pulled this stunt previously, twice actually. He had a pattern. Find a married woman, shower her with compliments and affirmation, and then urge her to leave her spouse. When the dust settled and the money stopped coming, he'd disappear like Houdini. Justin was a professional home wrecker. It was not love, it was a hustle. He pumped these ladies up, made them believe they were invincible, and rode their wave until it was no longer convenient. And Carla? She was the ideal mark. She sought attention and approval, just like a fish craves water. Justin had her wrapped around his finger, and she didn't realize it. The worst part was his smug attitude about it. I heard from mutual acquaintances that Justin was already discussing their major plans. He reportedly told someone, "Once the divorce is finalized, Carla and I are going to build an empire." Empire? Dude, you are a trainer, not a tech mogul. But, certainly, dream big. Justin was banking not just on Carla's money, but also on mine. Carla demanded half of my funds, spousal support, and even tried to take the house. She imagined she could stroll into court, play the victim, and walk out with a golden ticket to her and Justin's new life. Little did she know, my lawyer had receipts, and I wasn't going to give up. Let me paint a picture of Carla and Justin as a couple. Imagine a guy who only owns tank shirts standing next to a lady who suddenly believes she is a Kardashian. They were all over social media, posing in front of nice cars, not their own, and tagging themselves at costly restaurants. I'm guessing Carla was paying the tab. It was as if they were screaming, "Look at us, we're winning." But anyone with half a brain could tell they were overcompensating. Their partnership was not without flaws, however. Justin's over-the-top personality began to conflict with Carla's developing diva mentality. One night, I heard Mom on the phone in the kitchen, shouting with someone. "I don't care what your exes said about you, Justin. You're with me now, and I deserve better than your baggage." I didn't catch the rest, but it was enough to convince me that their little fantasy wasn't as flawless as they wanted everyone to believe. As much as it irritated me, there was something strangely fulfilling about seeing Carla go all in on Justin. She'd put everything on this guy, believing he was the key to a better life, and it was only a matter of time before the house of cards collapsed. My lawyer and I were making certain of that. Carla's confidence dipped after mediation. She entered the room acting like Beyoncé and exited looking like a deer in headlights. It was beautiful. Justin, her ever-loyal hype guy, did not even attempt to console her. He simply sulked behind her, scrolling through his phone. That was my first indication that their small empire was not as strong as Carla had led everyone to believe. But let's go back a little bit. Mediation was not only a setback for Carla, it was a calamity. She expected to come in, cry a little, and go with the house, half my savings, and spousal support. Carla's counsel portrayed her as an underappreciated wife who gave up all for my mediocre goals. Do you have mediocre dreams? I'd been working my ass off at this warehouse job for years. Steve, my lawyer, was prepared. He provided spreadsheets, screenshots, and even credit card stubs to back up my claims. Carla had been depleting our joint account for months before she filed for divorce. We're talking luxury spa days, expensive outfits, and $200 dinners while I'm eating leftovers and attempting to find out what went wrong. Steve made sure the court saw every dime she squandered. Then came Justin's skeletons, his previous romances, his habit of sweet-talking married women, and how he always bailed when the money didn't flow as planned. What about the cherry on top? Steve discovered messages from one of Justin's exes urging Carla to be cautious. Of course, Carla refused to listen. She felt she was unique. Justin's smirk was also gone. In fact, he appeared uneasy. He probably saw his little scheme was crumbling in real time. Carla attempted to defend him, stating, "Justin isn't like that anymore." However, the evidence was stacked against them. The judge didn't buy their act. By the end of the session, it was evident Carla wasn't going to walk away with the riches she expected. Justin? He appeared to be already plotting his exit route. Carla began acting out after the mediation session. She wasn't as arrogant anymore. She continued to post uplifting rubbish on Instagram, but the captions became frantic. Instead of living my best life, Carla said things like, "Growth isn't always easy, but it's worth it. Keep reminding yourself of this." Justin, on the other hand, revealed his true colors. He was still present, but not in the way Carla described. He began skipping their public appearances, no more hand-holding at posh restaurants or couple goals gym photos. Word spread that he was already flirting with one of his other clients, a younger woman who did not come with Carla's baggage. Typical. Carla was late getting home one night. I was still living in the house with her at the time, as I couldn't legally kick her out. She stumbled in, looking completely exhausted. I didn't say anything, I simply sat there on the couch, observing her. She placed her fancy bag on the counter and sighed dramatically, as if she wanted me to ask what was wrong. But I was not playing that game. I just went inside my room. Carla tried to act normal the next morning. She went around the kitchen preparing one of her kale smoothies, but her typical smugness had vanished. "Justin's been busy with his clients," she announced unexpectedly. I did not respond. I knew she wanted me to bite and ask about him, but I wasn't giving her what she wanted. A week later, the real drama began. Steve called me. Carla apparently filed some last-minute paperwork in an attempt to claim additional assets. She demanded emotional compensation for the stress I had given her during our marriage. Yes, you read it correctly. Carla believed she might acquire more money by blaming me for her midlife crisis. I couldn't believe their arrogance. Steve, being the legend that he is, was already ready for this crap. He filed a countersuit, demonstrating how Carla had depleted our funds and emotionally manipulated the situation to her advantage. He even used her Instagram posts as evidence. The subtitles alone were great, proving that she wasn't some stressed-out victim, but rather a self-absorbed diva living her best life at my cost. Around this point, Justin officially quit. He stopped showing up to their gym sessions, stopped returning her calls, and even blocked her on Instagram. Yes, it's blocked. Carla was losing it. I could hear her pacing around the house, calling him repeatedly. "Justin, call me back. We need to talk." She sounded desperate, and it was actually satisfying. Finally, one of her companions spilled the tea. Justin had moved on to another client, someone younger, flashier, and, more crucially, not involved in a difficult divorce. Carla was devastated. She tried to keep things cool by posting cryptic comments like, "Sometimes people aren't who they seem," and "You can't build an empire with someone who's playing games." But everyone understood what had transpired. Her ideal man had bailed the moment things became tough. This is when Carla's entitlement began to shatter. She has stopped attending the gym. Her once glamorous ensembles were replaced by sweatshirts and unkempt hairstyles. She even stopped posting on Instagram for a spell, which was really surprising. It was as if her entire identity was linked to Justin and the vision of their new life. Without him, she had no idea what to do. One evening, she attempted to speak with me. "Dave," she started, standing in the living room doorway, "I think we need to reevaluate everything. This divorce, it's been hard on both of us." I gazed at her, waiting for the punchline. "What are you getting at, Carla?" She sighed heavily, as if she were the victim here. "I just think maybe we rushed into all of this. I mean, we had good times, didn't we?" I nearly laughed. "Carla, you filed for divorce. You told me I was holding you back, remember? Now that Justin's gone, you're having second thoughts? Unbelievable." She tried to play the compassion game by mentioning how lonely she was and how much she had given for this marriage, but I wasn't buying it. "Carla," I interrupted, "you made your bed. Now lie in it." Carla's tiny fantasy world was collapsing, and I didn't have to raise a finger. Karma was doing all of the work. That's all for now, Reddit. I'll keep you posted after the final court ruling, and trust me, you won't want to miss it. Update 2. Hey, Reddit. Dave is back. You've stayed with me this long, so prepare for the grand slam of this whole disaster. If you've been following along, Carla, my ex-wife, believed she could go to court, take everything, and begin her new life with Justin, her personal trainer. But karma came calling, and we're now in the home stretch. Let me explain how the courtroom drama unfolded and why Carla probably wishes she hadn't gone in there. Court day eventually arrived. Carla stepped in, but not with the usual diva strut I'd come to expect. No fancy blazer, no cocky grin, just her and her lawyer, marching into detention with the confidence of 2 children. She must have realized things weren't going to go her way. The energy was off, and I honestly enjoyed every moment of it. On the other side, I was with my lawyer, Steve. He arrived prepared, carrying a thick binder that could have served as a doorstop. I was not nervous at this time. I had nothing to lose. Carla had already thrown all of her punches, and I was still standing. Today was about ensuring that I not only survived, but also won. Carla's lawyer began by presenting her emotional compensation claim, which I mentioned earlier, portraying a picture of Carla as a patient wife who had been emotionally exhausted by my lack of support for her personal development. Apparently, my failure to support her fitness journey, also known as her affair with Justin, was a sort of neglect. Steve, my lawyer, let her lawyer speak for a long, enabling them to dig their own hole. Then it was our turn. Steve began by meticulously demolishing their argument. He demonstrated that I had not only supported Carla, but had gone above and above on her so-called fitness journey. He provided evidence that I had taken over home tasks, modified my work schedule, and even pushed her to pursue her ambitions. He read aloud text conversations in which I offered to make her healthy meals, encouraged her gym sessions, and even suggested we join couples fitness classes to deepen our bond. Then Steve dropped the bombshell. Carla's emotional compensation claim was not only unfounded, it was a clear attempt to conceal her own emotional carelessness. He showed emails and texts in which Carla openly mocked me to her friends, calling me dull and deadweight. He also had screenshots of her gushing about Justin and referring to me as her backup plan. The final nail in Carla's coffin came when Steve addressed the financial side of her claim. He showed us our bank statements, revealing how Carla had diverted thousands of dollars from our joint account to fund her lavish lifestyle. Carla's lawyer attempted to argue, but Steve refused to give up. He disclosed the ultimate piece of evidence, Carla's journal entry, which Steve had subpoenaed. Carla had written about her master plan to leave me, get whatever she could out of this marriage, and use the settlement money to start a new life with Justin. When the judge read that, his expression was one of complete amazement. The courtroom was dead silent as the judge flipped through the documents, his stern look becoming more intense with each page. Carla sat next to her lawyer, looking agitated, her polished nails nervously pounding on the table. Her confidence, which she had displayed so brazenly during mediation, had vanished into thin air. I sat across from her with my lawyer, Steve, feeling a mixture of expectation and joy. This was it. The moment Carla's tale would crumble. The judge began by considering Carla's emotional compensation claim. Mrs. Patterson, he continued, his voice steady yet forceful. Your request for emotional compensation lacks any substantive evidence. He stopped, allowing the words to sink in before continuing. While emotional anguish is a relevant component in some situations, this court expects concrete and demonstrative evidence. Your claims are based on subjective sentiments rather than facts. He focused his attention on Steve's counter-arguments. He detailed phone conversations, bank accounts, and Instagram posts that depicted a far different picture than Carla and her lawyer had attempted to present. Mr. Patterson, the judge continued, speaking to me for the first time. You've shown a clear and consistent pattern of support for your wife throughout the marriage. The evidence presented indicates no signs of emotional maltreatment. In reality, it indicates the reverse. You went above and beyond to meet her requirements and expectations. Carla's lawyer attempted to interject, but stumbled over an objection that the evidence was taken out of context. The judge silenced him with a raised hand. The context is clear, counselor. Let him move on. The judge next went to the financial element of the issue. He painstakingly examined the evidence Steve had supplied. Mrs. Patterson, the magistrate said in a stern voice, you withdrew over $223,000 from your joint accounts in the period leading up to this divorce filing. These funds were not used for household expenses or shared needs. Instead, they were spent on luxury items, high-end dining, and personal indulgences. The court finds this behavior irresponsible and in direct violation of your marital financial obligations. Carla shivered in her seat, her face flushed deeply crimson. Her counsel attempted to downplay the expenditure, stating that it was part of her coping technique during a tough period. The judge wasn't impressed. Coping mechanisms do not justify financial recklessness, he stated emphatically. Then I came home. Carla had boldly asserted her right to half of it, stating she had contributed emotionally, if not financially, to its upkeep. Steve was prepared for this. He presented paperwork proving that I had paid the mortgage in full, maintained the property, and even handled renovations, all while Carla contributed nothing. The judge did not mince words. The house will remain the property of Mr. Patterson, his announcement stated. Mrs. Patterson, you have no financial claim to it based on the evidence presented. Carla's jaw dropped. Her lawyer whispered something into her ear, but she waved him away, too astonished to answer. The judge was not done. Furthermore, he went on. Due to the unauthorized use of marital funds, Mrs. Patterson is ordered to reimburse Mr. Patterson in the amount of $23,750. You could have heard a pin drop. Carla's lawyer sagged in his chair, clearly defeated. Carla appeared to have lost her breath. Her carefully constructed narrative had fallen spectacularly, leaving her with only the repercussions of her actions. The decision was final, no appeals or loopholes. The judge closed his folder and announced, "This court is adjourned." I relaxed back in my chair, a sense of relief sweeping over me. Justice had been served, and I felt free to breathe for the first time in months. The anxiety in the air as we left the courtroom was apparent. Carla's lawyer was already packing his suitcase and avoiding eye contact with everyone. Carla walked following him, her head lowered. For someone who had entered this process with the confidence of a reality TV star, she suddenly appeared completely defeated. Steve rubbed my back as we walked out. We did it, he added with a slight smile. I nodded, appreciating his work. He had not only supported me, but also revealed the truth about Carla's manipulating ways. As I left the courthouse, I couldn't help but look back at Carla. She remained standing there, staring blankly at the floor. For a fleeting moment, I felt a twinge of sympathy, but it immediately disappeared. She had caused this pandemonium, and now she had to face the repercussions. Over the next few days, the consequences of the decision became abundantly clear. Carla was told to leave the residence within 30 days, and I made sure to enforce it. She tried to stall, stating she needed more time to organize her affairs, but I wouldn't budge. I informed her that she'd had plenty of time to prepare while she was busy bragging about her affair with Justin. But reluctantly, she packed her belongings and moved out. It was surprisingly pleasant to watch her leave on that final day. She piled her luxury bags into an ancient automobile, which one of her friends had reportedly loaned her, and drove away without saying goodbye. The house, which had before been filled with tension and hostility, felt unexpectedly tranquil. Carla's financial position deteriorated dramatically. She was left to fend for herself because she no longer had access to my income or the marital funds she had been draining. She attempted to sell some of her fancy clothes and handbags, but it was insufficient to repay the sum she owed me. Word spread that she was borrowing money from friends, who were rapidly bored of hearing her sob stories. Justin, however, has completely vanished. He didn't respond to her calls or messages. Carla unexpectedly arrived at the residence one night, roughly 2 weeks after the verdict. I opened the door to see her standing there, her once perfect beauty replaced by unkempt hair and haggard eyes. She looked like she hadn't slept for days. "Dave," she replied gently, her voice cracking. "Can we talk?" I stepped outside and closed the door behind me. "What do you want, Carla?" I inquired. She hesitated and wrung her hands. I wanted to say I'm sorry for everything. I made mistakes, big ones. I let Justin manipulate me. I got caught up in this fantasy, and I ruined everything. Her comments seemed scripted, but the despair in her eyes was genuine. She didn't come to apologize out of true remorse. She was here because she had no other options. "I don't know what you expect me to say," I said, my tone calm but forceful. "You made your choices. You chose Justin. You chose to try and take everything from me, and now you're dealing with the fallout." Tears welled in her eyes. "I just can't. We at least be civil? Maybe start over?" "I have nothing, Dave. I'm lost." I looked at her for a time, feeling nothing but resolve. "Carla, I gave you everything. My support, my trust, my love, and you threw it all away. You don't get to come back now and ask for a second chance. That's not how this works." She fell down sobbing on my porch, but I didn't move. After a time, I returned inside and shut the door, leaving her alone with her regrets. Since then, I've moved on. Carla, according to what I've heard, is still battling to get back on her feet. She's destroyed bridges, lost friends, and is now facing the consequences of her own actions. Sometimes karma doesn't just knock. It kicks down the door. Carla was left with only the repercussions of her deeds. I raised my wife's children as my own, but when they disrespected me, I stopped providing and left. Am I the asshole? I've always believed in a few fundamental principles: working hard for what you have, accepting responsibility for your actions, and remaining loyal to those you care about. I also learned the hard way that loving the wrong people can lead to serious problems. This entire story is about how my views were put to the test, and how everything I thought I understood about family came crumbling down. To be honest, this isn't a happy story. It's about being taken advantage of, being exploited, and finally recognizing when enough is enough. I am not going to sugarcoat anything. I'm going to tell you exactly how it happened because I believe it's vital to be honest about these things. We often hear of happy endings, but sometimes the ending is simply an ending. And sometimes that's fine. It is actually necessary. I'm not trying to be a saint here. I made mistakes. I was perhaps very trusting and inclined to believe in the best in others. I ignored certain red signs and paid the consequences. However, I also learned a lot. So, how did it all begin? It began with a woman named Amelia. She was widowed. Her husband, a military officer, had died. She had 2 young children, a boy named Daniel, who was about 4 years old and full of energy, and a baby girl named Mia, who was just learning to walk. I met them through a mutual friend, and I could tell immediately away that Amelia was struggling. She wasn't just sad, though she certainly was. It was more than that. She was totally fatigued, visibly weary. You could see it in the way she held herself, the dark circles under her eyes, and the way she appeared to be running on fumes. It wasn't just "I'm tired" tiredness. It was a deep, bone-weary exhaustion caused by carrying the weight of the world on your shoulders. I didn't intervene because I felt obligated or anything. It was not some sort of knight in shining armor complex. It was only that I actually saw her. I observed her struggle and wanted to help. I wanted to make things a little simpler for her and the children. I had a genuine desire to provide some stability and support in their lives. I began by helping out in small ways, such as offering to keep the kids so she could take a nap or running errands. However, it quickly became more. I found myself yearning to be a father figure for those children. Their father had passed away, and I felt confident that I could fill in for him, not to replace him, of course, but to provide them with the love and support that every child needs. I suppose you could say I was contrasting my own values, hard labor, responsibility, and loyalty, with the circumstances they were in. I wanted to give them what their father couldn't, not because I had to, but because I really wanted to. It felt right. It felt like the beginning of something positive, something real. And for a long time, it was okay. I poured myself into it. I worked long hours not only to pay the bills, but also to ensure that those children had everything they required. A decent school, great clothes, a pleasant home, lots of food on the table, all of it. I prioritized their needs before my own. I wasn't simply attempting to meet their basic needs. I also wanted to alleviate any sense of loss they may have had because their father was not present. I wanted to fill the vacuum and make them feel safe and cherished. It wasn't all about the material goods, however. I was also there for them emotionally. I attended every single school event, soccer game, and play. I cheered the loudest. I was their biggest fan. I planned birthday parties, family vacations, and did all of the dad things. They answered. They loved me back. They addressed me as Dad, rather than Thomas. And you know what? I believed it. I actually did. I felt like I was the luckiest man alive. I believed I had established a genuine, loving family. I was so caught up in the idea, in the desire for it to be true, that I failed to notice the cracks that were beginning to appear. I was so intent on creating the perfect photo that I ignored the warning indications. Looking back, I realized that I was building on a foundation that was not as firm as I had assumed. But at the moment, I was fully committed. I invested my heart and soul. I was determined to make this work and be the greatest father figure I could be. I put everything I had into it, and for a while, it appeared to be paying off. We had rituals, conventions, and inside jokes. We were a family. I felt confident that emotion was what kept me going. The initial signals of problems were minor, almost insignificant. A few comments from the youngsters, some backtalk, and a roll of the eyes here and there. Nothing significant. Nothing unusual for children growing up. I brushed it off. I told myself that was just standard teenage behavior, a phase they were passing through. I didn't want to perceive it as more than that. I recall Daniel, he must have been around 13 or 14, making a nasty remark about how I wasn't cool because I wouldn't let him stay out late. Mia, who was a few years younger, responded with a similarly nasty remark. It stung a little, but I laughed it off. I told myself they were only testing boundaries and pushing limits, as all teens do. As the children grew older, the disdain became more obvious. By the age of 17, Daniel had become a full-fledged teenager. He began ignoring curfews, dismissing any advice I offered, and generally acting as if he was entitled to do whatever he wanted. It was typical teenage rebellion, but it felt different. Sharper, somehow. There was a meanness that I couldn't ignore. Mia, who was around 14 at the time, began copying her brother's conduct. She would roll her eyes at me, ignore my orders, and dismiss any worries I expressed. They established a united front against me, demonstrating that they did not respect my authority. Or me, for that matter. It felt like they were ganging up on me, seeing how far they could push me. Amelia's reply, or lack thereof, exacerbated the situation. She declined to intervene. She would not back me up. She'd just sit there, generally looking at her phone, pretending not to notice what was going on. Sometimes she would even gently undermine me. Maybe she'd appear to be distracted by her phone or sigh, as if I was being unreasonable. It wasn't simply passive. She seemed to actively encourage their actions. She'd make excuses for them. Oh, they're just tired. They're going through a phase, or we need to keep the peace. There was always something. However, it was actually a pattern of supporting their disdain. She was allowing them to get away with it, undermining my authority and making me feel more lonely. I started to feel like I was the only one who cared about setting boundaries and teaching them what was right and wrong. I began to mistrust Amelia's motives. Was she truly this oblivious, or was she purposely undermining me? I received my first true wake-up call about this time, but I still didn't completely understand what was going on. The true breaking point, when everything began to fall apart, occurred one night. Daniel arrived home much beyond his curfew. I'm talking hours later, and he hadn't called, texted, or anything. I was scared sick, of course, but when he eventually walked in, he acted as if it was nothing. I asked him calmly where he had been, just a simple question to ensure accountability. He did not even look at me. He simply stated, "Relax, I'm not a kid." That was it. There was no apology or explanation, just a flippant brush-off. And then he shouted, "You're not my real dad. Stop acting like you own me." All those years of love, care, and support were flung back in my face. It felt like a punch in the belly. Mia, who was standing there, chipped in. "Yeah, you're just some guy mom married." As if all the years we'd spent together and the experiences we'd shared were meaningless. Something inside me has just broken. It wasn't anger, not yet, but rather a deep sense of disillusionment. And the worst part? Amelia did not say anything. She just stood there silently. Her silence represented the ultimate betrayal. It proved all I had suspected, that I was nothing more than a convenience to them, a provider, someone to handle the things their true father couldn't. It was the defining moment for me, when I learned that the family I believed I had created was a fiction. It was not long after the first episode that it occurred again. This time, it was Mia. She had made a mess in the kitchen, so I asked her to clean it up. Simple enough, right? Basic responsibilities. But instead, she simply looked at me and said, "Why don't you do it? It's your house, isn't it?" That stung. It wasn't just the contempt, it was how she said it, as if I were a servant whose sole function was to clean up after them. It accentuated my outsider status, reducing me to little more than a provider and cleaner. It was an intentional attempt to make me feel insignificant. And then, as if on cue, Daniel added the identical line. "You're not even our real dad." It was as if they were tag-teaming me, reaffirming their rejection and ensuring I understood my place, or lack thereof, in their lives. But this time, Amelia's reply sealed the deal. She didn't yell or become irritated. She just looked at me nonchalantly, not glancing up from her phone, and remarked, "They have a point, Thomas. Maybe you should back off." That was all. That was the moment I realized it was finished. It was no longer just the children's disdain. Amelia had explicitly agreed with them. She was siding with them against me, the guy who had spent years caring for them. It wasn't a moment of rage or even pain, not really. It was a moment of clarity. I eventually realized I was finished. There was no going back. This was not a family. It was a fake, and I was finally ready to leave. It was a gentle epiphany, a peaceful acceptance of the fact. I was no longer striving to hang on to something that was not genuine. I was ready to let go, so I did something I never imagined I would do. I paused. I stopped giving, caring, and trying. It wasn't an impulsive decision. It was a calculated, thoughtful one. I've just withdrawn. I stopped providing for them. No more rides, allowances, protection, guidance, or worry. I let them face the repercussions of their behavior. It was a total 180 from the way I had been for years. I was always there for them, no matter what. Now I was gone. I'm not going to lie, it stung. It contradicted every instinct I had. I had committed so much of myself in this family, and it was really terrible to simply walk away. But I knew it was important. I needed to defend myself. I knew it would not be easy. I knew they would react and try to push back. But I was prepared for it. I'd hit my limit. I gave them everything I had, and they threw it back at me. I was finished being the doormat. At first, they laughed. They insulted me, made caustic remarks, and smirked whenever I passed by. They believed they had won. They assumed they didn't need me. They were relying on Amelia to deliver all I was providing. They were wrong. They'd make these tiny jabs, copying my directions and mocking the way I tried to set boundaries. They'd exclaim, "Oh, are we breaking the rules?" while rolling their eyes and smirking at each other. It was as if they were attempting to provoke me, to elicit a reaction from me. Oh, Amelia made sure to pick up my slack. She paid for their small shopping trips and ensured that their weekends were still full with fast food and excessive spending. She kept them comfortable, smug, and convinced them they didn't need me. But I knew it would not last. I knew Amelia had few resources. She did not have the same salary as I did. She couldn't keep up that kind of spending indefinitely. So I stayed quiet. I let them have fun. I let them think they could get away with it. I knew the reality check was coming. I didn't participate. I did not argue. I did not react. I simply observed calmly, waiting for the inevitable. It was a strange kind of patience, formed by the conviction that I was correct. I knew their confidence was based on a flimsy foundation that would soon disintegrate. I simply had to wait it out. It was a waiting game. Then, gradually but certainly, things began to alter. Shopping outings became less regular. Fast food trips became fewer and farther between. New garments have ceased emerging. Small changes at first, but visible. Then more problems began to surface. School expenses became an issue. Daniel got into some difficulty at school, and Amelia wasn't sure how to handle it. Mia smashed her phone and had no money to repair it. I remember the first time Daniel missed his school transportation. He'd always taken it for granted, rarely trying to express gratitude. Now he was alone. He had to run for the bus, and from what I've heard, he barely made it, huffing and puffing, absolutely out of breath. It's a minor detail, but it was symbolic. It was the first noticeable break in their comfy world. And I'll confess it. I felt a sense of satisfaction, not joy, precisely, but a quiet vindication. I knew what it was like to strive and work for everything you had. I recall when I was younger and had to work hard to make ends meet. They, on the other hand, have always received everything. Naturally, I said nothing. I just watched. I could see Mia's frustration when she learned her broken phone would not be magically replaced. I overheard her complain to Amelia, as well as Amelia's increasingly feeble justifications. She was running out of money and realized she couldn't offer everything I had. That following day, Mia had a major breakdown, complaining about how unfair it was that she couldn't have her phone repaired. Amelia finally stated, just above a whisper, that she didn't have the money right now. It was a minor admission, but a crucial one. It was the first time she had openly acknowledged her limited resources. It was the beginning of the end for their denial. The truth of their situation began to seep in. They were beginning to realize that their privileged existence was dependent on me, the person they had so easily discarded and despised. The free ride was ended, and they were beginning to feel the bumps in the road. It was a brutal but necessary awakening. My absence was making itself felt. Not long after the phone incident, Amelia confronted me. Of course, she was upset. She accused me of being childish and disregarding my obligations. That word, responsibilities, stayed with me. It indicated how she saw me, not as a partner, not as a father figure, but as someone with commitments to meet, a provider, a walking ATM. She kept blaming me for everything that was going wrong. She felt I was abandoning them, being selfish, and not acting like a man. She tried to make me feel guilty, as if I were the terrible guy. It was all a projection, of course. She was projecting her own failings onto me. I let her rant. I let her say everything, and when she paused for breath, I asked her a simple question. I questioned her why she had never defended me, and why she had always supported the children, even when they were disrespectful. I questioned her why she had let them treat me the way they did. And that is when it happened. That's when the truth eventually emerged. She sneered, and I mean sneered, and said, "Because I agree with them, Thomas. You were never really their father." It felt like a slap in the face, but it also confirmed everything I had assumed. But it did not end there. She went further. She actually stated that she had warned the kids not to let me manage them. "I told them not to let you control them," she claimed. "I raised them alone before you, and I can do it again." That was the real kicker. It was not simply passive passivity. It was deliberate long-term undermining. She had intentionally promoted their disdain and poisoned their minds against me. Daniel and Mia were standing in the corridor, arms crossed, with smug expressions on their faces. It seemed like they were enjoying the show. At that point, I thought, this is it. This is who they really are. Not the sweet, innocent children I had tried to love and care for, but spoiled, entitled brats, enabled by their manipulative mother. Despite the hurt and betrayal, I felt relieved. It was over. The charade was over. I had an answer. There was no ambiguity and no space for doubt. I knew without a doubt that I had made the right decision by walking away. The reality was unpleasant, but also liberating. I was finally free. But things worsened before they improved. Amelia's rage, combined with their own sense of entitlement, drove the kids to act out even more. It began with tiny things. My personal possessions would disappear. Then some crucial work files vanished from my computer. I began to suspect they were teasing me, but I had no proof. The situation then escalated. One morning, I discovered my car had been keyed, a long, deep mark along the side. That's when I realized I needed to do something. I discreetly installed security cameras inside and outside the home. I didn't tell anyone, including Amelia. I only wanted to gather proof, and I succeeded. A few days later, I caught Daniel and Mia on video in my closet. They were laughing, ripping up my garments and destroying them with scissors. It was purposeful vandalism. I did not challenge them. I did not yell or scream. I just stayed quiet. I documented everything. I've saved the video clip. I took pictures of the damage. I gathered all of the menacing texts they'd sent me, evidence of their growing anger. I was playing along, letting them believe they were winning while secretly planning my departure. I realized I had to defend myself, not just emotionally, but legally. I knew things were going to get bad, so I wanted to be prepared. I was preparing my case, accumulating the ammunition I'd need to fight back if necessary. It was a sad and pathetic scenario, but I was resolved to handle it with as much respect and calm as I could. I was not going to come down to their level. I was going to be smart, strategic, and quiet. The next step was to see a lawyer. I described the problem and showed him all of the proof I had obtained. He listened quietly, nodding occasionally, and when I finished, he told me I had a solid case. We discussed divorce, and he even offered a restraining order due to the children's growing animosity. I also filed a police report regarding the property damage. It felt strange to report my stepchildren to the police, but I knew it was necessary. I needed to keep an official record of their actions to protect myself from any accusations or legal challenges. It was another step in the process of breaking relationships and freeing myself from this toxic environment. Then, one afternoon, while Amelia and the children were gone, I packed a bag. I didn't take much, just the necessities, the things that were most important to me. I left everything else behind, including the furniture, appliances, and material possessions I had accumulated over the years. They weren't important. What was crucial was my freedom and peace of mind. I left an envelope on the kitchen countertop. The divorce papers were inside, along with copies of all supporting documentation, such as the police report, images of the damage, and screenshots of the threatening texts. It was a formal act of separation. There was no going back. I went out of the house and did not look back. I got into my car, the one with the long scrape on the side, and drove away. I didn't have a plan, really. I just knew I needed to get out of the toxic environment I was living in. The last phase was financial. I stopped all joint accounts and denied Amelia access to my assets. It was a harsh move, I admit, but it was necessary. I had to limit her capacity to continue enabling the children's entitled behavior. I needed to make it apparent that the gravy train had halted. It was the final cut of ties, the ultimate act of departure. It was over. Amelia reacted as one could have imagined. She contacted me several times, leaving furious voicemails accusing me of being a coward, abandoning them, and being a bad person. She claimed she could live without me, that she didn't want my money, and that she would be better off without me. It was just bluster, of course. She was in denial and refused to acknowledge the reality of the situation. I did not return her calls. I did not react to her texts. I've just blocked her number. I declined to engage in additional dispute. I had spoken my piece. I'd taken my stand, and I was finished. I needed to focus on my own well-being and create a new life for myself. Then the children began messaging me. At first, they sent the same careless, arrogant messages they had always sent, but the tone gradually shifted. They began to sound apprehensive and even sorry. They apologized for their actions, admitting that things were challenging, and that they were struggling without my help. Finally, I got a message from Mia, the younger one. It was only 3 words. I miss you. It was a big change, but it was too late. The damage was done. The trust was broken. I couldn't return, even if I wanted to. I stayed mute. I did not respond. I recognized their regret, but I remained solid in my decision. I'd learned a harsh lesson and was determined not to make the same mistakes again. I gave them everything I had, and they threw it back at me. I was finished. My silence was my response. It was my way of saying, you made your choice, and now you have to live with the consequences. So, that is my story. It's not pretty, but it's genuine, and it taught me some essential things. The most important rule is to never allow others to take you for granted. Never beg for respect. Never waste your energy on individuals who do not appreciate you. And if you feel used or insulted, move away. Do not hesitate. Do not look back. It's a difficult lesson to learn and even more difficult to apply, but it's necessary for your own well-being and self-respect. You deserve to be treated with kindness, respect, and love. And if you don't get it, you have the right or obligation to walk away. Some individuals only recognize your worth after you're gone, and by then, it's too late. It's a terrible truth, but it is nonetheless a truth. Do not wait for them to recognize your worth. Know your worth and act appropriately. It is not about selfishness. It is about self-awareness. It is about protecting your heart, mind, and soul. Thank you for reading. I hope my story can help someone out there who is going through something similar. Remember that you are not alone, and you deserve to be happy. Do not let anyone tell you otherwise. Choose yourself. My mother manipulated my fiancé into cheating with my brother. I exposed their lies, and now they're paying the price. My name is Stephen, 31, and I've been with my fiancé Lynn, 28, for 2 years. We've been engaged for 6 months. My younger brother Wesley, 29, lives around 15 minutes from us. Our mother, Nancy, 55, has always been intense, but she has recently been acting strangely with Lynn. It began with Mom making odd comments about Wesley's gym success or how some women simply need a more physically present male. I work 50 to 60 hours per week to provide for our future, and Wesley works as a personal trainer. Nothing wrong with it, but Mom treats him like he's a Greek god. Last month, I noticed Lynn acting differently during family dinners, more silent and checking her phone more frequently. I dismissed it as wedding planning stress. Things went horribly wrong yesterday. Mom invited Lynn over to discuss wedding plans while I was supposed to be at work. My crew finished early, so I decided to surprise them. I drove up to Mom's house and pushed open the window. I overheard everything. Mom was in full manipulation mode. Lynn, honey, I'm telling you this because I care. Stephen's just like his father, always working, never home. Wesley could give you the attention you deserve. He's asked about you, you know. He says he sees how lonely you are. Lynn's response made my blood turn cold. Nancy, I don't know. Stephen's been distant lately. Mom intervened. He's the stronger man. You need a real husband. Someone who will be there, not just provide a paycheck. Wesley could give you that passionate life you deserve. I stood frozen. Lynn then stated something that shocked me. Wesley has been texting me, nothing inappropriate. That was when I walked in. The expressions on their faces. Mom had the guts to smile as if she were doing me a favor. Lynn became white like a sheet. I did not yell. I did not need to. I simply looked at Mom and said, "So this is what wedding planning looks like?" Mom straightened up, feeling righteous. Someone had to say something. "You're never home, always at work." "Wesley," I cut her off. "Wesley this, Wesley that. Really funny how you never mentioned the 3 failed relationships he's had this year alone." Lynn attempted to explain. Stephen, it's not what you think. Let me see your phone, I requested. There is no more sound. If nothing is inappropriate, show me the texts. She gripped her phone closer. Mom started screaming about how I'm being controlling, how I don't trust Lynn, and how Wesley would never demand to see someone's phone. Rich, coming from the lady who reads her father's emails just to make sure. I walked out. Lynn followed me to the driveway, crying about how confused she was and how her mother had gotten into her head. She vowed to delete Wesley's phone number, as if it mattered nothing. I got home to find 6 missed calls from Wesley. He texted me, "We need to talk, bro." We sure do. Mom has been blowing up my phone all day. Obviously, being paranoid is costing me a nice woman. Dad also called, attempting to maintain the status quo as usual. You know how your mother gets, son? She means well. Means well? She is actively attempting to set up my brother with my fiancé, and Lynn is sleeping in the guest room, claiming she wants space to ponder. Funny how that works. What is the worst part? My friend Patrick informed me that Wesley had been turning up at the coffee shop near Lynn's employment for weeks, coincidentally during her lunch hour. Very subtle, bro. I'm not playing their games. I'm not going to sit around waiting for any more innocent texts or coffee shop coincidences. I just received a missed call from Mom, which was most likely another lecture about how Wesley always made time for family or something. I'm going to sleep on the couch tonight. Tomorrow's going to be fascinating. Edit. Holy cow, this blew out. Thank you for your support. To answer some typical questions. Yes, we are in couples counseling. No, I didn't know about the texts until yesterday. Wesley is still blowing up my phone. I left him on red. Some of you consider this a hoax because no mother would do this. You're lucky to have normal parents. Lynn texted me that she'll be staying at her sister's apartment until things quiet down. Yes, it will help. Mom has already called twice this morning. Have not responded? I'll provide an update once I've determined my next course of action. Right now, I need a drink and some sleep. Update 1. First and foremost, I'd like to thank everyone who supported my last post. I wish I had better news, but everything happened precisely as some of you expected. Sorry for the lengthy post, but I needed to get everything off my chest. Quick recap. I'm 31 and I noticed my mother, Nancy, 55, acting strangely around my fiancé, Lynn, 28, and making jokes about my brother, Wesley, 29, being more of a man than me. You warned me, and I should have listened sooner. The last 3 weeks have been horrible. Lynn began going out more, claiming girls' evenings every Thursday and occasionally Saturdays. I didn't think much of it until I realized she came home smelling like Wesley's terrible fragrance. You know the type, the one that every wannabe Instagram fitness dude uses. Last Thursday, she stated that she was going to see her friend Amber for cocktails. Something felt odd. She was dressed differently than usual and had been texting all day with a strange smile. I decided to drive past Wesley's apartment complex on my way to meet Patrick for our weekly Thursday gaming session. Call it intuition or anything, but her car was right there in the visiting area. I waited in my truck for about 20 minutes, feeling my blood pressure rising with every minute. Then I noticed them through his ground floor window. They sat on his couch, her head on his shoulder, watching something on his laptop. My own brother and my fiancé, looking as comfortable as can be. I am not proud of what happened next, but I am also not regretful. I marched straight up and knocked on his door. The look on their faces as they opened it, Wesley in his dumb compression shirt, Lynn in the things I got her for her birthday. I'll never forget this. How long, is all I asked. Lynn began crying, but not the guilty type, but the I got caught kind. Wesley attempted to walk between us, inflating his chest like he often does. Bro, we need to talk about this like adults. I cut him off. How long? 2 months, Lynn muttered. It just happened. You're always working late, and Wesley understands me better. I laughed. Actually, I laughed. Understand you better? The guy who still lives in a rented studio apartment at 29? The one who sells overpriced protein powder to college kids? That's when everything started to go wrong. Wesley tried to throw a punch. He was always a hothead. I grabbed his arm and shoved him back into his flat. Really, you, my fiancé, and then try to hit me? Real classy, bro. I called our mother right there on speakerphone. Do you want to know what she said? She genuinely chuckled and said, "Well, honey, I tried to tell you. Wesley's always been the stronger one. Lynn needs a real man, not someone who's going to bore her to death." Within a few hours, the family group chat had exploded. Wesley played the victim, alleging I threatened him. I did not. Lynn used the butterfly emoji to accompany a hazy Instagram tale about following your heart. My mother began calling everyone, weaving her version of events in which I was the evil person who drove Lynn away due to my workaholic tendencies. Dad is staying out of it, which is typical. My sister texted that she is appalled with all of them. The extended family is divided. Half believes I should man up and fight for my relationship with my unfaithful fiancé, while the other half has some sense. Lynn moved out yesterday, while I was at work. She took everything I ever gave her, as well as other things she didn't own. She left her ring on the kitchen counter with the remark, "I never meant to hurt you." Classic. The kicker? Mom organized a family supper tonight. Guess who arrived together? Yes, Wesley and Lynn are holding hands like teenagers. Mom looked so proud. You'd think she had planned a royal wedding. I didn't go, of course. I sat at home, looking for all the indications I'd missed, the unexpected gym sessions, the new clothes, the way she'd turn her phone away when texting Wesley, showing up at family occasions he typically avoided, and Mom's frequent comparisons. Here's the thing, I'm not sad. I am not even angry anymore. I'm just finished. I'm over Wesley's phony alpha guy act. I'm done with Lynn's victim routine. I'm done with Mom's manipulation. They think I'll just take it and show up at Christmas as if nothing happened. They have no idea what is coming. TLDR. I caught my fiancé with my brother. Mother practically arranged the whole thing. They're now playing the happy couple while portraying me as the bad guy, but I'm not taking it lying down. Edit. Many thanks for the prizes and messages. To everyone who has asked, yes, I have already spoken with a lawyer about what Lynn took, and no, I am not going to try to work it out as some of you advised. Some bridges need to be burned. Edit 2. Stop DMing me and asking for Wesley's Instagram. I understand you want to disgrace him, but I'm doing it my way. Update 2. It's been 3 weeks since my previous update, and holy, everything just went horribly wrong. Remember how Wesley and my mother used to gloat about how I'd ultimately come around and accept things as they are? Yeah, karma is a bitch, and I am her favorite wingman right now. First and foremost, thank you for all of your supportive direct messages. You guys kept me focused when I wanted to drink myself stupid. Special thanks to the person who advised that I look into Wesley's business methods. You were onto something there. So, remember how Wesley was constantly bragging about his personal training business? It turns out Mr. Perfect was not exactly following the rules. All those protein supplements he sold to his customers, he was getting them from a shady supplier and repackaging them in his garage. I may have provided an anonymous tip to the fitness certification board regarding his unlicensed practice. Whoops! What is the best part? He was conducting his business using Venmo and Cash App without reporting anything. That type of information tends to pique the curiosity of tax officials. I didn't even have to do anything illegal. I simply forwarded some of his social media postings where he was literally bragging about his cash-only dealings to the appropriate individuals. My mother, Nancy, was not pleased when Wesley's certification was suspended. She came to my flat last Tuesday, yelling about how I was killing the family. I just stood there sipping my coffee as she was having a meltdown in the hallway. My neighbor even filmed it. Thank you, Mrs. Johnson. TikTok truly took off. You're just jealous because Wesley's a real man, she yelled. I just chuckled and added, real men pay their taxes, Mom. The expression on her face was amazing. But this is where things get better. Remember how my mother was always the top real estate agent in our area? It turns out she's been cutting corners too. Nothing huge, but enough that when someone, certainly not me, began investigating her business operations, things became intriguing. What about those fantastic reviews she was always bragging about? Half of them vanished after being identified as suspicious. Lynn is beginning to detect flaws in her beautiful new man. Wesley had to cancel their weekend excursion since he could no longer afford it. She tried to contact me through Patrick last week, stating she misses our conversations. Yes, right. Patrick told her that I was too preoccupied with my new promotion to care about her drama. Oh, did I mention I was promoted? It turns out that channeling your anger into work rather than drinking produces positive results. The rise is good, but the timing is even better. Wesley is having to move back in with our parents because he can no longer afford his apartment. The family is now separated. Half of them are not speaking to me, which is good because I didn't like those cousins in the first place. The other half continues to send me funny emojis whenever Wesley or Mom write cryptic Facebook statements about being strong in the face of critics. Everything came to a climax last night at a family meeting intended to sort things out. Mom and Wesley ambushed me at Dad's home. They attempted to guilt-trip me about family loyalty while Lynn sat there looking uncomfortable. I quickly brought out my phone and showed the video of Mom telling Lynn that Wesley was more manly than me. Dad had not seen that one before. His face changed from crimson to purple quite quickly. He requested Mom to go. This is the first time I've ever seen him stand up to her. Wesley tried to get in my face, saying I was sad for not fighting fairly. I simply smiled and asked him how his protein shake company was going. He swung at me, missed, and his face hit Dad's coffee table. He now has a shattered nose that matches his wounded ego. Lynn began crying, stating that this was not what she wanted. I simply shrugged and replied, "You made your bed. I hope it was worthwhile." I then went out, leaving Wesley bleeding on Dad's carpet. This morning, my phone was flooded with alerts. Wesley's certification board made their final verdict online, and he will be barred from personal training for at least 2 years. Mom's real estate broker fired her after additional complaints surfaced, and Lynn, she is informing everybody who will listen that she made a mistake. What is the best way to exact revenge? I am truly happier today. I got my own place, my job is doing well, and I've met someone new who values loyalty. Life is funny like that. TLDR. Brother and ex-fiancé believed they had won via cheating. Mom backed them. I played the long game, legally revealed their nefarious methods, and now they're all paying the price, while my life is better than ever. Edit. Holy cow, this blew out. RIP. Inbox. No, I will not post the TikTok video. I'm trying to maintain some privacy here. Edit 2. Stop asking for Lynn's social media. It's not cool, guys. Edit 3. Yes, Wesley attempted to swing at me. No, I did not press charges. His shattered nose and ruined reputation were enough. Finally, an update. Thank you to everyone for your support. It's been 2 months since my last update, and things have really escalated. Grab your popcorn, for Karma has finally arrived, and she's a stone-cold TLDR. Wesley's life crashed. Lynn crawled back. LOL. No. And my mother's idyllic little world disintegrated. Sometimes vengeance is simply watching others kill themselves. At 6 a.m., the phone started vibrating. Last Thursday. I ignored Wesley's first several calls, but by the time I got out of the shower, I had 19 missed calls from him, Lynn, and my mother. Didn't bother phoning back. I just prepared coffee and watched the show on Facebook. Remember how I described Wesley's supplement business in my previous post? It turns out the protein shakes he was selling were not quite legal. Someone, not me, anonymously informed the health department about his unlicensed company. They conducted a surprise check and discovered his garage filled with outdated supplements that he was repackaging as premium protein blends. What is the best part? He had been peddling this trash at his gym. When word spread, his clients began commenting about feeling sick. The gym promptly dismissed him. His personal training certificate? Gone. My mother used to brag about her affluent clients. It's all gone. But wait, things get better. Remember the electrical work Wesley did at Mom's office? The one she kept telling me to admire because your brother is so handy? It's interesting how the building inspector showed up after receiving images of unlawful electrical work. My mother's real estate office had to close for 2 weeks for emergency repairs. It cost her a fortune, and she failed to close 3 sales. I did not do anything wrong. I simply ensured that the appropriate individuals received the correct information at the right time. Lynn began to reconsider her upgrade when Wesley found himself unable to pay their flat any longer. She genuinely showed up at my house last week, weeping about how she had made a mistake. I told her I was busy. I was actually preparing for a date with Zoe, the new receptionist at my gym. Yes, Wesley's former gym. Petty? Maybe. Worth it? Absolutely. The real satisfaction came during Sunday's family meal. Mom insisted on these wee-wee meetings, using them to highlight her successful offspring. This time, I did turn up. First time since the separation. I brought Zoe. Mom almost choked when she saw us. Wesley and Lynn were also present, both of whom appeared unhappy. Wesley is wearing his old high school clothes since he cannot afford new ones. Lynn was trying to capture my attention, but I was too busy telling everyone about my promotion, supervisor position, company truck, the full thing. Mom tried to divert the subject, but Dad, who has finally grown a spine, kept inquiring about my job. Then Wesley lost it. He began yelling about how I had wrecked his life. Mom leaped in to defend her precious baby boy. I just sat there eating potatoes while Wesley had a meltdown. He even accused me of reporting him to everyone. Of course, we couldn't prove anything. I simply smiled and inquired whether he had tried the new protein shakes at the gym. I heard they were legit. Lynn attempted to play mediator, which was amusing. Stephen, can't we all just get past this? Lynn, what are you moving past? Your decision to become a stronger man who now cannot afford Dollar General protein powder. Mom's real estate business is suffering. It turns out that when you lose your office for 2 weeks and are charged with health code breaches, people begin searching elsewhere. The gossip group she adored? They're having a field day with her handyman son and the expired supplement scandal. What about the cherry on top? Dad eventually spoke up. He told Mom he was weary of her playing favorites. He has been sleeping in the guest room and talks about taking some time to reflect. I did not have to throw a single punch or break any laws. I simply sat back and watched karma do her thing. Wesley's strength proved ineffective when his house of cards crumbled. Mom's beloved golden child is now the neighborhood joke, and Lynn, last I heard, is looking for teaching jobs in another district when parents at her school learned about the controversy. Me? Life is good. Zoe is great. She respects a man who works hard rather than just bragging about his protein shakes. The promotion came with a good raise, and best of all, I slept like a baby knowing that all I had to do was wait for their own deeds to catch up with them. Mom still calls occasionally, typically wailing about how I have pulled the family apart. I simply let it go to voicemail. Wesley attempted to connect on LinkedIn last week. Denied. Lynn sent a lengthy email discussing closure. Unread messages were deleted. They desired a stronger man. They did get one, but it wasn't what they expected. Edit. Because people keep asking, yes, all of the reports and tips were entirely real. They were actually selling expired vitamins. The electrical work was clearly not up to code. I just made sure everyone noticed. My mother-in-law wrote my husband's ex's name on my birthday cake, so I pranked her back on hers. She went quiet, and I blocked her. Allow me to tell you about my mother-in-law, the queen of criticism. She made it apparent right away that she didn't like me or our marriage. Every time she entered our house, it was as if she had a radar for spotting flaws in everything. She had a secret plan to nitpick her way through our lives. Take this one instance. She stated that she preferred a specific type of tea and could not stand anything else. I thought I'd be the perfect host and get her that same tea, but it wasn't enough for her. As soon as she caught a scent, she acted as if I had served her some sort of deadly sludge and tossed it out, insisting she would never say she enjoyed something like that. But that was only the top of the iceberg. This woman had a knack for being snooty in the most innovative ways. She made sarcastic remarks about my cuisine, clothing choices, and even how I furnished our home. It felt like she had a personal vengeance against me. You'd think my husband would put his foot down and advocate for me, right? Well, he tried and failed. He'd always try to smooth things over, saying that she needed to respect our decisions and embrace me as a member of the family, but she wouldn't budge. It was as if she wanted to be the family's gatekeeper and determined I wasn't up to the task. Seriously, who does that? We were meant to be a family, Yet she treated me like an intruder. So I couldn't believe it when I learned that my mother-in-law, of all people, had planned a surprise birthday party for me. It was a strange twist given that she had never been a fan of mine. I had conflicting feelings, wondering if she was pulling a prank or actually wanting to make amends. Little did I know that my birthday surprise was going to be anything but joyful. The day began with the usual birthday celebrations, balloons, decorations, and smiles. I tried my hardest to put my worries aside and enjoy the moment, but then the truth hit: the birthday cake. As they brought out the cake, I was delighted to see what it looked like, but imagine my surprise when I saw my husband's ex's name spelled out in huge, strong characters rather than mine. Seriously, how could this happen? I glanced to my mother-in-law, trying to figure out what was going on. She had a smirk on her face that suggested she was hiding something. Then she casually said that she had misspelled my name because she was becoming older and forgetful. Yes, right. It was evident that she did it on purpose. Who misspells their daughter-in-law's name and writes the ex's name on her birthday cake? It felt like a cruel joke, and I couldn't believe she had sunk so low. Everyone else seemed to be in astonishment, unsure how to react. I tried to remain calm, but deep inside, I was hurt and enraged. It was difficult not to take it personally, given all of her caustic words and disdain. When my husband saw the birthday cake, he was as surprised as I was. He sincerely wanted to surprise me with a unique birthday celebration, but his mother stepped in and offered to prepare the entire thing herself. It felt like a promising sign that she was now willing to try to improve our relationship. She expressed to my husband that she wanted him to have a good relationship with me and was willing to make an effort. It was as if she was playing the part of a compassionate and understanding mother-in-law, leading him to believe she had turned a new leaf. He had no idea that it was all a ruse, a devious scheme to ruin my birthday and harm me in the process. I did not want to ruin the party, so I simply smiled. I had other things planned. Now, let me tell you some backstory. My mother-in-law seemed to have a penchant for causing difficulties by comparing me to my husband's ex. It was ironic, because my husband had informed me that she had never approved of his ex. Talk about déjà vu. What made it even more humorous was that my mother-in-law had been my father-in-law's second wife. It was as if she had casually forgotten her own history while messing with ours. The irony was too real. The narrative of my father-in-law was a mystery in and of itself. My spouse knew little about his other family, and I hadn't provided much information either. We just knew that my father-in-law had two families, and his other family seemed uninterested in this one. We heard rumors about a distant and troubled relationship with them, but the specifics were kept under wraps. It was as if there was a hidden barrier that we were never supposed to breach. After a year of marriage, I discovered that my father-in-law's divorce from his first wife was caused solely by my mother-in-law. It was like something out of a soap opera, with family secrets and drama around every corner. I couldn't help but wonder if my mother-in-law's incessant comparisons were an attempt to establish herself and fill the shoes of my husband's first wife. It was as if she was attempting to erase the past and establish herself as the ideal wife. But no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't change the fact that my husband's prior marriage was unrelated to me. We were our own pair, with our own special love story. Coming back to the present, as I previously stated, I did not respond. I simply smiled at her mistake. My mother-in-law's birthday was the next day, so I decided to return the surprise. I decided to play a prank by writing my father-in-law's first wife's name on the birthday cake rather than my mother-in-law's. Of course, I pretended to be completely innocent, blaming the bakery for the mix-up. Oh, her expression when she saw the cake, it was amazing. She was furious, and I couldn't help but smirk. It felt like karma had come full circle. All those times she had belittled me and made me feel unworthy, and now she was the one suffering the consequences. She began yelling and throwing a tantrum, but I stayed calm and composed. My husband attempted to calm her down, but she refused to listen to reason. It felt freeing to watch her lose control for once. I innocently asked whether she was okay, appearing to be unaware of the situation. Inside, I was gleefully chuckling. But she stormed out, unable to take the humiliation. My husband seemed perplexed and inquired as to if I had done it purposely. I refused to admit the reality, so I pretended it was an honest mistake. Come on, I must have picked up the wrong cake, I said with a completely innocent smile. He was completely taken in. It was my little secret, my opportunity to give her back what she deserved. I knew I shouldn't have descended to her level, but I couldn't stop myself from giving her a taste of her own medicine, and it felt great. Do you think I went too far by bringing up past wounds? My small birthday cake prank appears to have sparked quite a controversy. My mother-in-law is constantly moaning, claiming that I did it on purpose. However, as the saying goes, what goes around comes around. Of course, I denied it and pretended to be completely innocent. I reminded her about the time she ruined up my birthday with the tea incident and how I didn't respond the same way she did. Come on, it was only a cake, right? There's no need to blow everything out of proportion, but you know how mother-in-laws are. They're always looking for an excuse to be dramatic. She enjoys the spotlight, and this was her chance to shine. The entire family is aware of how volatile she can be, so it comes as no surprise that they are all on my side. They've witnessed her dramatic antics before, and they're not buying it this time. It's actually rather funny how the tables have turned. She's used to being the center of attention and getting her way, but this time, she's left red-faced and enraged. I have to say, I am loving the program. My spouse seems to be torn between defending his mother and believing me. But, well, I'm not going to tell you about my little joke. Let him think about what he wants. Everything's in good humor, right? Update 2. Since the small cake prank, my mother-in-law has been surprisingly quiet and has not bothered us much. It's like a breath of fresh air, and life has become significantly more calm. Maybe my little joke had a bigger influence on her than I realized. Perhaps she realized her dramatic theatrics were not getting her anywhere and decided to tone it down a notch. Or perhaps she's simply sulking in a corner, nursing her injured pride. Regardless, I'm not complaining. I can finally breathe without being constantly scrutinized and criticized. It's as if a weight has been removed off my shoulders, and I feel more liberated than ever before. Of course, I am not stupid enough to believe that this newfound peace would remain indefinitely. Knowing my mother-in-law, she might be able to recover from her drama quickly. But for now, I'm just going to enjoy it. Update 3. You know the saying, if you can't defeat them, block them. And this is exactly what I did. Life has been so much better since I decided to block my mother-in-law. No more nagging or drama, only lovely, peaceful silence. And thank you to everyone who supported me in the comments. It is comforting to know that I am not alone in dealing with a dramatic mother-in-law. Your words of support have given me strength. When she confronted me about blocking her, I just acted calmly and blamed it on network troubles. Hey, a little white lie never hurts anyone, right? Furthermore, it's enjoyable to tease her a little. I must say, I'm loving my newfound power and control. Blocking her has given me a sense of freedom and calm that I never thought imaginable. It's as if I have the remote control for her drama, and I get to choose when to turn it on or off. To everyone dealing with a dramatic mother-in-law, be strong and don't allow anyone to knock you down. Until next time, be careful and live your best life. Bye for now. Opinion 1. NTA for sure. Dealing with a demanding mother-in-law may be a nightmare, and you took the necessary precautions to keep your sanity. Blocking her was a wise decision, because network troubles occur all the time, right? You deserve to live a tranquil, drama-free existence. Don't allow someone to guilt you into coping with unwanted karma. Continue doing you and enjoy the well-deserved peace. Opinion 2. NTA is my gal. Mother-in-laws can be a pain in the neck at times, and you may have to take action yourself. It's critical to prioritize your mental health, and if that means avoiding toxic people, then so be it. Stay strong, and don't let anyone make you feel guilty about putting yourself first. My mom sold my stuff and pawned my laptop. I called the cops, had her arrested, and filed a restraining order. Christmas dinner was almost finished when my father put down his fork, looked me directly in the eye, and said, "You are a burden, and you can no longer live with us." At first, I assumed I had misheard him. My mother let out a strange, nervous laugh, as if she wasn't convinced he was serious. But then he simply sat there, staring at me, waiting for a reaction. The room went silent. My younger sister Lily froze with her fork halfway into her mouth. She glanced at me with wide eyes, as if she couldn't believe what she'd just heard. I swallowed the slice of ham I was chewing and set my fork down. What? You heard me, he stated. You've overstayed your welcome. You need to move out. The reality check. I just sat there, trying to process. I was 23. I had a regular career and could have left long ago, but I stayed because they needed me. I paid the energy bill, internet, and groceries most weeks, which they couldn't afford because my father had been unemployed for years and my mother only worked part-time. I was not a burden. I was the reason the lights remained on in that house. And now, out of nowhere, I'm being tossed out like a useless freeloader. Mom has finally spoken up. Maybe we should talk about this later. No, Dad interrupted. This is my house, I make the rules, and I say he's done here. Lily's fear. Lily set down her fork. She was barely 16, and I could tell she was afraid. She looked at our parents as if she didn't recognize them. What did it mean for her that they could throw me out so easily? I took a deep breath. I wasn't about to argue or plead. What if they wanted me out? Fine. But they were not prepared for what that really meant. I slumped back in my chair. All right, I said. Dad sat up straighter, as if he had won an imaginary fight. Mom still looked uneasy, but she said nothing. Perhaps she was in shock. Perhaps she didn't care as much as I imagined she would. I stood up, grabbed my plate, and took it to the sink. I didn't want to give them the reaction they expected. Instead, I gazed at Lily, who remained tight and uncertain. I gave her a slight nod. She was the only one at the table that I still cared about. Dad sipped his drink, as if nothing had happened. Mom returned to picking at her mashed potatoes. Lily continued looking at me, as if she wanted to say something, but didn't. I did not remain to complete dinner. I just walked out. The silent goodbye. That night, I walked directly to my room, closed the door, and began packing. I wasn't going to waste time figuring out why they were doing this. If they wanted me gone, I was gone. However, this meant they would lose all I had paid for. And I wasn't about to warn them. I packed quietly, but I could hear them talking below. Mom's voice sounded low and terrified. Dad's tone sounded forceful, as if he were attempting to persuade her of anything. I caught bits and pieces. He's old enough. We can handle it. He should have moved out years ago. An hour later, Lily knocked at my door. I opened it, and she slipped inside, closing it behind her. She appeared distressed, her eyes red as if she had been sobbing. What the hell was that? She said. I don't know, I replied, tucking my laptop into my bag. But I'm leaving tomorrow. She shakes her head. That's crazy. You pay for everything? They can't even afford food without you. Not my problem anymore. Lily bit her lip, clearly attempting to keep back more tears. Where are you going? I'll figure it out. The fact was that I had some money saved up, but I had not intended on moving out so soon. I'd have to locate a place quickly, perhaps staying at a friend's for a while. But I wasn't concerned. I would be all right. They would not. Lily paused. Can I? She stopped herself. I knew what she'd ask. She wanted to join me. But she was still in high school, and as much as I disliked leaving her behind, I couldn't bring her with me. You know they'd never let that happen, you said. She stared down at the floor. Yeah. I finished packing while she stood there, as if she didn't want to go. Finally, she sighed. You're going to regret this. I grinned. I know. The next morning, I left before they even awoke. I hauled my bags downstairs, loaded my car, and took one last glance around the house. There's no sadness. No regrets. Just relief. Then, as I was driving out of the driveway, I entered my banking app and erased my name off all bills. Electric, internet, water. Even the Netflix account I had paid for each of them. Without me, everything would shut down within a month. I grinned, put my car into drive, and drove away without looking back. For the next few days, I stayed at my friend Jake's apartment while looking for a place of my own. His sofa sucked. His dog, Max, would not stop looking at me while I tried to sleep. His roommate repeatedly asked, "Are you staying forever?" But none of this mattered. Because I was free. No more paying for a house that I didn't want to live in. No longer pretending to appreciate a man who threw me out of Christmas dinner. No more being regarded as a walking ATM. I was finally doing something for myself. 3 days after I left, my phone started ringing. Initially, I ignored it. 7 missed calls from my mother. My father called me twice, which surprised me because he seldom did. Lily sent a handful of SMS. I also ignored those. Until she sent it. They're freaking out. The power's been cut off. I grinned. They honestly believed that the bills would magically pay themselves. Then, another text. Dad's losing his mind. He said you did something to the house. Oh, this was getting better. I could just imagine Dad stomping about in the dark, cursing at my mother while she cried over the Wi-Fi being down. An hour later, my phone called again. This time, I responded. The moment I took up the phone, my mother's voice hit me like a hurricane. Kevin, we don't know what happened. The power's out. The internet's down. The water bill. You didn't pay, I replied simply. Silence. Then, in a hushed voice, you paid for these? I nearly laughed. Are you serious? Who else did you think was paying for them? She paused. Your father said. She interrupted herself. I already knew. My father was too proud to acknowledge he didn't know how things worked. He presumably assured her that everything would be all right. That the house would function flawlessly even without me. Not my problem anymore, I said. Kevin, please, we didn't mean. I hung up. Not my problem anymore. I assumed that was the end of it. They would figure it out. Perhaps my father will finally get off his ass and get a job. Perhaps my mother would work more hours. Perhaps they will sell something to keep the lights on. Either way, it's not my concern. The next morning, I awoke to a message from my bank. Fraud alert. A suspicious login attempt was detected. I sat up fast, my heart racing. I checked my email. 3 additional alerts. Someone had attempted to enter my account. And I already recognized who it was. I quickly logged in and went over my purchases. Nothing had been taken yet. But there it was. An attempt to reset a password. Another failed login. Then a third. I clenched my jaw. My father must have been quite desperate, calling Lily. I phoned Lily. She responded right away. I was just about to call you, she said quietly. Dad's freaking out. He keeps yelling about money. He was on the computer all morning. I breathed sharply, trying to get into my bank account. She was silent for a second before cursing beneath her breath. Does he have my old passwords? I inquired. Probably, she confessed. You know how Mom used to keep them in that little notebook by the computer. I knew it. My father must have gone through that, figuring I'd be stupid enough to continue using the same passwords from high school. Kevin, Lily whispered. Her voice shook. He's really pissed. I think. She paused. I heard shouts in the background. My father's booming voice, the banging of doors, and my mother crying. I think he's going to do something stupid. Lily's words sent shivers down my spine. What do you mean? What did he say? I inquired, squeezing my phone more tightly. She lowered her voice. He's saying you ruined us. That you did this on purpose to screw him over. He's talking about calling the cops. I nearly laughed. For what? Not paying his bills? I don't know, she hissed. He's losing it. Mom's crying, saying she'll talk to you, but he won't listen. He keeps saying, he's not gonna get away with this. Kevin, I think he wants to go after you. That took the smile off my face. I had expected my father to get desperate. To beg. Perhaps even try to guilt-trip me. But to believe he would gain revenge on me? That was a new level of foolishness. Locking down everything. Lock your door, I instructed her. If he does something crazy, call me. I hung up and quickly changed all of my passwords. Bank accounts, email, streaming services, even my Amazon login. Then I called my bank to report the hacking attempt. They had locked my account so tightly that I even had difficulty logging in for a few hours. I assumed that was the end of it. I was completely mistaken. That night, Jake and I were hanging out in his apartment, playing some ridiculous Xbox game. Then, bang! Someone slammed the door. Hard. Jake paused the game. Are you expecting someone? I was not. I already got a horrible feeling. I got up, walked to the peephole, and my stomach dropped. It was my father. He was standing in the corridor, hands clenched and breathing like a bull prepared to charge. Jake asked, "Who is it?" I stepped back from the door. "My dad." Jake stood up. "Dude, what's going on?" Bang! "Kevin, open the door." I did not move. Bang! "This time, it's harder. I know you're in there. You think you can just walk away from this?" Jake scowled at me. "Dude, should we?" Before he finished, my father kicked the door in. "Calling 911. That was it. I grabbed my phone and called 911. "My dad just showed up at my apartment," I told the dispatcher. "He's banging on the door, yelling at me, and he just tried to kick it in." Jake stepped back. "Kevin, this is crazy." I met his gaze. "Yeah, I know." I held the phone to my ear while my father continued yelling, "You ungrateful little... You think you can just walk away? You owe us? You..." "Sir, officers are on their way," the dispatcher stated. 2 minutes later, I heard sirens. Then my father's voice went silent. A knock at the door. "Police, open up." I opened the door just in time to see 2 officers handcuff my father. His face was hot and his chest heaved, but as he noticed me standing there, his expression altered. There were no regrets. There is no humiliation. Just pure hatred. "You did this," he muttered as he was dragged away. I simply stood there, unaffected, because the reality was, he did this to himself. They took my father away that night, but I knew things weren't finished. An hour later, Lily called. "Mom's losing it," she explained. "She's crying and saying it's all your fault." "Yeah, that sounds about right. She keeps saying you have to fix this. She's already calling people, trying to get bail money." I nearly laughed. "With what money?" Silence. Because we knew they didn't have any. No electricity. There's no internet. No savings. And now there is no father figure to yell at everyone while trying to be in charge. Without me, they were sinking quickly. I should have felt bad. But I only felt relief. "Keep an eye on her," I advised Lily. "If she does anything crazy, call me." Lily texted me the next morning. "Mom's selling your stuff." I froze. Then I called her. She picked up immediately, her voice harsh. "I told you to fix this? Are you selling my stuff?" A pause. Then, bluntly, "We need money, Kevin." I clenched my jaw. "So you're stealing from me?" "You don't live here anymore," she yelled. "You left all this behind. It's in our house. That makes it ours." She felt no regret. There is no guilt. It's just entitlement. "I'm calling the cops." "Don't you dare." I hung up. Then I phoned the cops. 2 hours later, I received a call back. "We talked to your mother," the officer stated. "She wasn't happy, but she's agreed to hold your things until you can pick them up." I messaged Lily. "I'm coming over." But I should have realized they were not prepared. Because when I arrived at the house, something made my stomach plummet. My automobile, sitting on the driveway. It should not have been there. I had left it at Jake's flat. I turned off the engine, my heart thumping. My car wasn't simply here. It had been driven. The front seat was folded back, as if someone had sat in it. The glove compartment was open. And, worst of all, the gas tank was nearly empty. I clenched my fist. They'd stolen my car. The confrontation before I could exit, the front door swung open. My mother stepped outside, arms crossed. "You called the cops on me?" she remarked. "You stole my car," I snapped back. She scoffed. "It was just sitting there? You weren't using it." I stared at her, trying to grasp the absurdity of this logic. "It's my car. How did you even get it?" She didn't respond. But I already knew. They had an extra key. "Mom," I said, my voice dangerously calm. "If you don't give me my key, I'm calling the cops again." Her expression flickered for a second. Then, without speaking, she stormed inside. A minute later, she returned and threw the key at me. It struck my chest and landed on the grass. "There," she spat. "Happy?" I picked it up, trying not to be angry. "I'm taking my things. And then I'm leaving, for good." I walked past her and into the home. Lily waited in the hall, looking nervous. "She took your laptop and pawned it," she said quietly. I closed my eyes. Take a breath in, breathe out. Then I turned to my mother. "Where's my laptop?" She raised her chin. "I told you. We needed money. That was it." I took out my phone, dialed 911 for the second time this week, and let her watch. "Yes, I want to report a stolen vehicle and stolen property," I responded, looking her dead in the eyes. "My mother has just revealed that she pawned my laptop without authorization." Her face lost its color. This time, she was the one who had to deal with the police. My mother worried when she realized I wasn't bluffing. "You can't do this," she muttered, her tone low. "I'm your mother." I ignored her. "Yes, officer. I have proof that she admitted to taking my belongings and pawning them," I stated over the phone. "I want to press charges." Lily stood motionless, her gaze flitting between us. My mother's hands were shaking now. She was absolutely taken aback, as if she believed she could keep pushing and I would never push back. "Kevin," she said again, this time softly, like if she were pleading. "We're struggling. Your father's in jail." I had no choice. "You had a choice," I explained. "You could have worked more. You could have sold your own stuff. You could have asked for help instead of throwing me out like garbage." She blinked rapidly, her face contorted. I was angry. I laughed. "Yeah, so was I." I heard sirens outside. My mother jumped. A few minutes later, 2 officers walked through the door. "Sir, did you call about the stolen property?" one of them inquired. I nodded and pointed to my mother. "She took my laptop and pawned it. I want to press charges." My mother gasped as if I'd stabbed her. "Kevin, don't do this." The officers turned to her. "Ma'am, is this true?" She hesitated, her gaze shifting between me, Lily, and the cops. I could see her calculating, attempting to determine whether she could lie her way out of this. Then Lily spoke. "She told him herself. Just before he called you." My mother snapped her head at Lily so quickly, it was almost frightening. "You little—" "Ma'am." One of the cops interrupted her. "Do you have a receipt from the pawn shop?" Her face fell. She knew what was coming. They took her outside. I looked through the window while they spoke with her for a few minutes. Handcuffs appeared unexpectedly. She was straining, crying, and yelling. Neighbors looked through their blinds. The entire street most likely heard her weeping about how she was simply a struggling mother and how unjust this was. Lily stood beside me, looking out the window. She gulped hard. "Is this really happening?" I nodded. "Yes." And for the first time in a long time, I felt calm. The text message. My phone buzzed with a message from an unexpected number. "You're going to regret this." My chest tightened. I read it again. Then I realized my father had been released on bond. When I saw that message, I knew exactly what had occurred. Someone had bailed my father out, and I had a fairly solid idea who. Probably one of his old drinking cronies, or perhaps a distant family member who hadn't heard the entire story. In any case, he was done and angry. I showed Lily the text. Her face turned pallid. "Kevin, you need to leave." "No," I replied. I turned to face the cops, who were still outside dealing with my mother. "Can I go in and get the rest of my stuff?" One of them nodded. "As long as it's okay with your sister." Lily was already moving. "Let's make this quick." We walked upstairs and packed everything that was mine. Clothes, old video games, even the silly things I had left behind, thinking I'd come back for them one day. I was not coming back. Ever. As I took the last box to my car, my mother was still crying in the driveway, pleading with the officers to let her go. "This is a misunderstanding. He's my son. He wouldn't do this to me. I just strolled by her, unconcerned. She screamed my name, as if it would suddenly change anything. I got in my car. Lily stood in front of my window, shuffling from foot to foot. I don't want to stay here. I exhaled. I know you don't, but you only have 2 years until you're 18. She nodded with watery eyes. I'll be fine. I'll just be quiet and keep my head down. Call me if anything happens. She nodded again. Then headlights arrived on the roadway. An automobile turned onto our street. My stomach sank. It was my father. He pulled up right as I started the engine. He hardly had time to go before I put it in reverse and backed into the street. He stared at me with hatred in his eyes, as if he were about to approach and try something. I rolled down my window just enough to carry my voice. You try to come near me again, I'm filing a restraining order. His hands tightened into fists. You think you're better than us? I smiled. I know I am. Then I drove away. It was the last time I saw them. I blocked my parents' phone numbers, changed my financial information, moved, and never looked back. Lily's independence Lily kept out for 2 years, just as she promised. She left as soon as she turned 18. She moved in with a buddy and headed off to college. We're still talking all the time. The consequences? My parents? My father never had a job. My mother lost the house a year later. They bounced around for a while, destroying relationships with family. And the last I heard, they were renting a dilapidated flat in a poor neighborhood. They attempted to reach out to me, Facebook messages, unknown numbers, even letters. I never responded because they had made their pick for Christmas dinner, and I made mine.